Moving on down.
Bring it out for the big stuff.
That's just so I can.
Break halfway through. There. Oh, I like this.
Today.
Sure. Check.
So how much money? Not much, but that doesn't walk in. Those are not boots. Quite that fast. It went down faster than.
And that's why we do things.
About, there was a,
Did you say you got
We did a road trip, 3,100 miles, Judy and I. Driving.
What did you make?
We went down for Thanksgiving to where my siblings are down in San Diego area. We all met.
And so you just kind of made the big loop?
Yeah, went down to Arizona and saw Dan and Annie and the kids and spent a few days everywhere. And then drove up to where Nate and Cammie are in Salt Lake City. And then drove home.
Bad weather at all? Well, Dad's not doing good, so he's on hospice, and we were planning on going down on the 17th, so we're on call the next week or 2 weeks. We hope it's the 17th, and we have a wedding, and then we, if the funeral's...
And here's that. Is it cancer or is
No, it's just, he's 86 and his body's he's not hungry anymore. But he's got his heart, he's had aphids for the last 5 years, but he's got heart, he's got kidney failure now, he's got a growth on a pituitary gland, he has leukemia that's not active. But he's just, the body's just giving out, so he won't eat. He forces himself to eat because he knows he has to do that to keep him alive, but he doesn't want to, and so we take him off of all the...
We're gonna wait a little bit while Rose goes.
One of them every day. That's his okay.
30 days or?
Yeah, I would say within 30 days, yeah. So,
Well,
but we've got a wedding back in Logan, so we're gonna head back for that. And then we're gonna visit parents, and then we're gonna bring Daryl back with us for Christmas. So, but the weather is gonna be, I think, a bear.
probably will be. It was perfect for us. Cool and crisp and sunny.
Good.
Kevin.
Rose is just walking in with all the stuff.
no, so the next day, because I didn't just a couple hours before our council meeting. So the next day I finally went to the doctor and I x-rayed it and I just like gotta do my phone. So I had moved a bone. She's not, so they cast it, but I can't do much with the hard cast on it, so. No, I just have the bandage on. I have a hard cast. I'm supposed to be but it's very limiting.
And you got a lot going on, so
But, well, it also, I didn't feel like it was, I mean, I know that they said, you know, use it as long as I needed to use it. And the thing is, it immobilized my hand and arm so much that not only was it inhibiting, but it was really hurt. You know?
So did it break or did it disappear?
It moved this bone out of line and then reset it. So when I was here, that long, yeah, and I was like, yeah, I was like, oh, I was in
Because
so
I
much
remember you
pain.
were just, when it was over, you said, I'm gone.
But I hadn't taken Advil or anything yet, so I was just literally aching to get home.
Well, we don't have a fireplace in our place. Have a fireplace, that's where we usually, we have it right up against it. Even though I've kept it. Yes.
Thanks, Russ.
Are we gonna do this now?
Oh, thank you.
So if you go 6, you got to
Thank you, Rose.
Make us look so smart. Make us look so smart.
Right. You are smart.
He's always
Ready? Welcome everybody to City Council tonight. It's nice to see so many faces out there who decided to weather the storm and be out here with us tonight, so thank you. Just want to let everybody know that tonight's meeting is going to be live streamed through KLYC. So that camera is over there. We also have camera systems that are recording this for airing at a later date through McMinnville Community Media. So because of that, we ask that as a courtesy to everyone in the room, as well as those watching at home, that you silence your cell phones. And so please do that now. Thank you. Before we move into the rest of the agenda, we ask Councilor Alan Rudin to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thanks, Alan. So I'd like to open up the meeting right now for anyone who would like to speak to the council. We always give time for citizens to speak to the council about anything that you might want to talk to us about, but we ask that we limit that conversation to things that are not on the agenda. Those things can be brought up when those agenda items come up. We also ask that if it's a matter that's in litigation or a quasi-judicial land use matter or a matter scheduled for a public hearing at a future date, so like in a couple weeks, that you wait for that time as well. So that said, is there anybody who would like to speak to the council about anything that is not on the agenda or coming up at a later date? No? Anybody? Okay, moving on. Thank you. So first off, we are going to be interviewing some candidates for a couple of committee positions that we have opened up. And so we're going to start with the Budget Committee. And we have three candidates for this position. And we asked that those candidates not being interviewed, actually the three candidates, could you stand up? We have Meredith Nelson, Matt Newton, and Fred Stemler. Okay, so we're going to do this in alphabetical order. So Meredith, you're going to be the first one interviewed, and the other two, you're going to be waiting in the council chambers. Help yourself to a soda. Make yourself comfortable.
Larry will put you in the cone of silence.
Right. Meredith, you want to come forward and sign in and state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Meredith Nelson. My address is 331 Northeast 7th Street.
Well, thank you for submitting your application to be on this committee. And so the council is going to ask you some questions. We have some questions that are laid out in front of us, and we'll be asking the other candidates the same questions. But just relax, and this isn't like a job interview. It's like a really weird job interview. But you're
Very strange.
You're
It's
going to do
been
fine.
live and, streamed all over the
I
place.
actually was interviewed by committee at the hospital.
All right. So I'm going to start over here on my left. Scott.
Well, Meredith, thank you for applying. I'll tell you, for some of us, the Budget Committee is the committee to be a part of, okay? Us that are stable analytics, we love that committee. Again, a couple of things the first question I would ask is, why are you interested in serving on the Budget Committee, and what specific contributions do you hope to make to that committee?
When I learned that there was a need for somebody to sit on the committee, I thought it was a good opportunity for me to take part in helping the city in something that I have strong skill set in. I am a CPA, licensed out of the state of Tennessee, and not Oregon, and I love analytics myself too. So I'm a numbers girl, and it's my natural thing to do, so I thought it would be a good role for me to take part in.
Great. One additional question I might ask is, you're associated with the hospital.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask this to all the candidates, but with the hospital, you have an opportunity to move, and you don't have a crystal ball to say, but how long would you expect to be in this community in the function that you're in right now?
I expect to be in McMinnville long-term. I actually own 2 homes here in McMinnville. I recently purchased an investment property here in town, so I have long-term plan to stay here as long as the hospital will keep me.
Thank you.
Remy.
Thank you very much for being here. What do you see as the most important role of the Budget Committee?
I see a budget as a guide to follow for all expenditures within the city. My experience with a budget has been doing a hospital budget, so I can only think in terms of what a hospital budget committee, which would be me, would be to prioritize and the spending and look at historical patterns and where we've spent, and to set guidelines for department expenditures. Pretty important role.
Thank you.
Right. Alan.
Thank you, Meredith. It's great to have you here interviewing, applying on TV.
And it's fabulous. It's great.
So you're obviously educated. You're chief financial officer at the hospital here in town. It's good to know. So there's department heads, I assume.
Yes.
So you work with department heads.
Yes, I have 7 departments that directly report to me. I'm responsible for the whole financial operations of the hospital and the financial guidance of the hospital. Every department has a department head that is responsible for their own individual unit.
Right, obviously. So what would be the 3 most important issues facing a budget-related item with your department heads, such as, what are 3 issues that you
Usually
can
staffing. So the number 1 expense for a hospital is salaries. So staffing is usually the largest thing that they're focused on. If we're talking about a clinical area, they're focused on clinical quality issues for a nurse manager. did you ask for three? So
Yeah.
staffing,
What are the three most common issues that come up with?
on staffing, it just really depends on the department and where their historical issues lie. If it's a plant operations department, it's going to be repairs and maintenance and where their expenditures are there. But I would, and I don't know.
Okay.
Whatever that department's issue
Okay,
is.
good, thank you.
All right. Larry?
Yeah, it's nice to have some quality people that we're interviewing. This is wonderful tonight. What skills or assets would you bring to the Budget Committee?
I would bring analytical skills and accounting knowledge and leadership experience.
Kelly?
You say council knowledge? Have you been on a city council before?
Accounting knowledge?
Oh, accounting
Sorry.
knowledge. Okay, sorry, misunderstood you.
Sorry. My accent coming out there.
Analytical skills, accounting skills. Sometimes I'm an accountant too. Cause us not to be maybe as flexible as we should be. How would you deal with discretionary funds in a budget if you felt other members of the committee were perhaps being a little more flamboyant than they should be?
We accountants do tend to be black and white and keep people in line. I'm very good at the gray areas. I have to be because things change on a daily basis at a hospital. So I very much listen to what people are bringing forward to me and don't just think in terms of how an accountant thinks. Think in terms of whatever that person or that department head is bringing forward to me and listen to their experience and gain their knowledge. I don't have all the knowledge that department head would have, so I have to listen to them. So I always make sure that I use as much of their knowledge to help me weigh the ins and outs and understand where they're coming from, and that in their eyes it may not be flamboyant where you and I might think it is.
It's a good question.
And I have the last question.
Okay.
Of all the city services, which do you think are the most vital that their budgets need to be protected? I'm not asking for winners and losers, but I think we're often having to make that decision of, we're either holding the line someplace and other departments need more funds. And how would you prioritize? What do you think is what are the vital services of the city that really need to be protected?
I would say fire, water, and roads. I have no idea. I don't have enough knowledge to be able to.
There's no right or wrong answers. That was a good answer. All right. Are there any other questions you have for the council about this position?
I don't think so. I kind of talked to Martha a little bit.
I just wanted to give just a little insight, Meredith. I think of any of the committees that we have at the city level, the Budget Committee is the one that really ties you into the comings and the goings of what happens at the council level, because funds are always available with every aspect of what we're doing, whether you talk about safety, whether you talk about transportation, we talk about employees, we talk about, and so I guess my observation is that the uniqueness of this Budget Committee is that you will become somewhat aware of what's happening all around you. I even think even more than on the Planning Commission, because there's a story to be said when you're looking at the budget and the financials and the historicals there. And we have graduated from just taking those long line-barred papers with just numbers to a very narrative budget that we have now. And you know, if you have an opportunity, I think the budget's online and you can take a look at that narrative approach that we take. I think we probably, in the state of Oregon, have one of the most user-friendly budgets to look at and to understand. And so, again, it's great to have someone with your background and your knowledge and desire to serve at the budget committee level. So I just thought I'd give some insights from that
Okay.
perspective.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right, thank you for being here,
Thank
thank you for
you.
your time. Larry, could you get Matt, please? Where's our bailiff? Where's our bailiff? Swanson?
That's what we need. I'll set that up.
Good evening, Matt. Could you state your name for the record, sign in with your address there?
They're on.
You're on already.
Oh, it's on. Matthew Newton, 2315 Southwest Taylor Drive,
All right, thank
McMinnville,
you.
Oregon.
All right, Matt, thanks for being here tonight and going through this process.
Thank you.
All the counselors, we have questions we're going to ask you, and just do your best. There's no right and wrong answer, just kind of want to get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
So let's start over here, Larry.
Okay, nice to meet you. So I'm going to ask, what skills or assets would you bring to the budget committee?
I believe some of the skills that I have relates to my career in the financial services industry. And so I work a lot with small business owners and individuals regarding their own budgets. I also am a member of a few community organizations where I work with our own budgets there. I think the other asset that I have is being able to look past just the numbers and actually engage in conversations regarding the greater good and the overall viewpoint of where the budget in the city wants to go.
Thank you. Kelly.
Matt, wonderful to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
You for your interest. Let's see. I haven't really looked at any of these. What do you think are the three most important issues facing the Budget Committee?
I went around and spoke with multiple department heads, and I don't think I have an answer for what are the three most important things. What I've come to understand is that the entire McMinnville community, the department chairs, and the city work as a cohesive unit to help one another and McMinnville decide which would be the best course of action. So I've heard from multiple different departments about their needs. Without learning more in depth, I can't tell you what I think would be the biggest need.
Okay. Another question then. On the Budget Committee, you know, you receive a budget, we go through the budget in that evening and talk about it. You can ask questions of the department heads as we go through it. There is a certain level of discretionary funds that the Budget Committee may allocate. How do you feel about those discretionary funds, and how would you feel if you felt perhaps we were overdoing it in those discretionary funds?
So you're asking that if we had discretionary funds and I felt that we were allocating too much into that fund,
Yes.
I'd bring it up and address it. I feel that if we're looking at a budget and there are funds set aside for multiple different projects or city entities, and we had this and there was too much there, the discussion would then become, well, could we use assets from here to help over here? So I'd bring it up.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Scott.
Matt, again, you don't know how pleasing it is to have a number of candidates for positions. It falls right in line with this volunteerism that's so abundant in this community. People love to be here. The community spirit makes it work. And so thank you. The question I have is, why are you interested on serving on the Budget Committee, and what specific contributions do you hope to make?
I'm very interested in community service and community outreach in our city government. Like I said, I'm involved in a number of different community-based organizations. I live in McMinnville. I've been in McMinnville for the better part of 10 years. I have a family. I have a new baby that might be on the way tonight or in the next week or so. But I really feel that, and I've said this a couple times, but McMinnville as a whole really comes together unlike many other places that I imagine that you guys have lived and where I've been. And I'd really love to get to know more about the inner workings of McMinnville, how the government works. How can we, or myself, be of assistance in continuing the forward progression that McMinnville has made as a community? We repeat the last part of your question.
What specific contributions do you hope to make on that committee?
I'd love to give it a different set of eyes, and I'd really love to just learn quite a bit. I think the more that I can learn about the inner workings of McMinnville, my understanding is not too many people volunteer for this type of thing, and so being involved, being young, energetic, passionate, I think it could be very different than what's previously been there. Not saying that's good or bad. But I'd love to take a different look at it.
Good. And one other question, I think you've answered it, but I'm going to be very specific because I've asked the other candidates. You've been in McMinnville about 10 years, and
Right.
You're selling insurance for New York Life.
Right.
I would guess that you're looking at roots are solid here, but looking down the road, how long do you expect to be in McMinnville?
I will not leave McMinnville for at least 14 more years. So I have a shared custody.
Okay.
So that being said, I'm not leaving. Besides that, I don't really know where else I would go. I have a pretty established business. My family's here. My friends are here. I don't envision picking up and leaving. I mean, maybe when I retire and go golf in Arizona or something like that. But until then, I have no idea.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much for being here and for your interest in this position. I'm going to ask you what you see as the most important role of the Budget Committee.
My understanding of the Budget Committee is the budget's presented, the department heads ask and talk about where the funds should be allocated, and the committee then takes a high-level view and then even a more specific view at the budget. I believe it'd be our job to advise, or my job to help advise if there are anything's out of place within the budget, ask questions regarding why there are certain things in the budget. Based on some of the conversations I've had, things move very smoothly within the budget of the city of McMinnville as far as all the departments are concerned. But if there's something that sticks out, we need to know why.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Alan.
Thank you. And thank you, Matthew, for your application. The question I wanted to ask you was that something that Councilor Hill alluded to earlier about this broader umbrella, like over the inner workings of the city. Number crunching and balancing is a big part of this committee, for sure. But what do you have to offer as far as a broader picture, a bigger picture that you would bring to the committee that would be an umbrella over the whole city, basically, of dealing with departments and issues that they have, such as, what I'm really trying to say is that you need something in addition to the skill of balancing and number crunching. So what would you offer in that?
I would say that I am great at building relationships. I don't know if any of you know anything about the financial industry or insurance, but it's a lot of talking and a lot of coffee. And what I mean by that is, and I said it earlier, it's looking past just the numbers, but it's about building relationships. The reason McMinnville is on the track that it's on and has been for such a long time is the inner workings between the counselors, the departments, and those types of things. And so what I bring is someone who understands how to communicate with others across multiple levels and continuing to keep that cohesion as a group.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Matt. I have the final question. The budget document is really a roadmap for this city, and in a way, it is a policy document. It's not just numbers, it's really setting priorities for the city. So in a hypothetical, if we were to have a surplus, and luckily we do have a surplus, but what kind of areas in the city do you think we would want to prioritize some of that money? What do you think is really vital, or that you see, perhaps not even vital, there's something that you really feel like could use some more attention?
Like I said, I met with multiple department heads. I understand it's a hypothetical question. I don't really have an agenda as to where I think things need to be, because quite frankly, I don't know. And I think part of that is continuing to have the conversations with different department heads, find out everybody's needs. So albeit it's a hypothetical, I don't have an answer for you because I don't know how the full inner workings of the city work. I don't know where the budget goes. We have a fabulous community that I think we can all agree on. And there are many different areas that could use money, but without actually having a conversation about it, I can't answer that.
A great answer. All right. Do you have any questions for us?
What are you looking for in someone on the budget committee? We have 3 people, all highly qualified, from what I understand. But what are you wanting?
Any thoughts?
I would say that, having a broad level of experience coming to the budget committee is important so that you can have that different look as you've talked about. I've been impressed that you've taken the opportunity, Matt, to go out and talk to department heads and get to know them, because I think that's a very important part to what we do from a standpoint of knowing the players. And department heads are so critical in setting the budget along with our city manager. It orchestrates itself, and in a given year, someone may sit back and say, I understand we have a greater need and you've been working towards this need, so I'll hold mine back and my turn will come, and understanding that delicate balance. And so, building partnerships and being able to see where it's coming from, and that it's just not a total numbers game. And then I think the other thing is, from my perspective, 2 things is that, you have that analytical nature that numbers don't put you to sleep, because for some people it does, and for others of us, we love it. It's what we thrive on. And then the other piece, from my perspective, is the passion for giving back to a community. Those are the things that resonate with myself.
Right. Kelly, you've been on the budget committee a long time too, right? What are your thoughts?
Well, you've mentioned a number of times wanting to learn, and I think it's a wonderful place to learn. I've learned a tremendous amount from the city, and also the fact that we do have an outstanding budget. I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of other city budgets, but it's a remarkable document in that there's a whole verbal explanation of what's happening within the department, what they would like to see happen, and this is what we can do this year, and then you look at the numbers. And it's a real learning experience. You do get a real feel for what's going on in the city, and you'll, I think, after a time or two, experience an understanding of what probably is the priorities versus, in some cases, versus others. Even so, the city is remarkably good at making sure everybody gets something. So it's an interesting thing, but I liked your comments on education, and I think that's well thought out.
Thank you.
Matt, one last question. As an agent with New York Life, you also do financial planning as well, correct? Okay. Excellent. Any other questions for Matt? Anything else for us, Matt?
Thank you, counselors. I appreciate you allowing me to come interview, and that's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Can you go get Fred? Thanks.
And he's got to stand up.
He does.
Get the job.
I like that he's young.
All three of them are in their 30s.
Hey,
Good evening.
Fred. Could you sign in?
Yep,
and,
certainly.
When you're done, state your name and address for the record, please.
Yep, no problem. Fred Stemler, 977 Northwest Meadows Drive, McMinnville, Oregon.
The record show he was doing that while writing. That's amazing.
Oh, it's for college now.
I can't talk and write at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
So you're saying that's a skill we're looking for?
I have a hard time spelling numbers on my checkbook. That's hard. All
Yeah.
right, Fred, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So we all have questions to ask you. We'll just take turns going around the table. Scott, why don't you start us off?
Well, Fred, thank you for availing yourself, having an interest. You know, from a council perspective, we're a community that we talk about livability, but a portion of that livability is all about the volunteerism that we have. We have about 200 full-time employees, but we have over 1,000 volunteers in this community. And it starts at this table, and it reaches out to many that are in the audience. I mean, it takes a little bit of a lot of people to get where we're at. And so thank you for having that kind of passion and desire to come before us. Fred, why are you interested in the Budget Committee, and what specific contributions do you hope to make?
So the interest is really, it's a match of skill sets, and you talk about the volunteerism. I mean, I live in the city here. It's one of the best parts of our community. I participate in some other programs throughout the city, through mediation and through the Rotarians, through our company, Recology, Western Oregon. We partner with a lot of different, so it's really in the DNA, and that's part of me as well. So I happen to be a CPA. Budgets, finance has always been it's not everybody's, but it is mine. I actually like tax time, so I thought it was a good fit, and if the need is there, then I thought I'd raise my hand. So really, it's a match of skill set.
Good. And, you know, there's a number of us that are kind of the analytics, and we love the accounting and the numbers. You know, that's kind of makes our day, and others don't have that. But one question, last question that I would have, and I've asked to all of those that have applied, you've been in the community about 3 years now.
Correct.
And you're here through employment. Not that you have a crystal ball, but how long do you see yourself being here in McMinnville with the company that you're with right now?
Yeah, it's hard to say. There's no immediate plans. I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. They're in the school system here. This is an end destination community, so it could be a lifetime. My crystal ball is probably about as good as yours, but the bags are packed.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
All right, Remy.
All right, thank you very much for being here. What do you see as the most important role of the Budget Committee?
Fiscal accountability. You know, sometimes our vision can extend beyond our means, and that's the household, that's the business, and that's the community. It applies across the board.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Alan, when you're ready.
Yes, again, thank you, Fred, for being here.
Yes, happy to be here.
It's wonderful to have you volunteer for this. I have a question, what happens when we come up short in a budget? What's the options for us when there's not enough money to pay for what's needed?
What happens when you come up short in a budget? Usually you got to find a new notch in the belt. And I think generally it can be a blessing. And I can't speak of this because I've never served on a city budget committee before, but I can look at it from a business perspective and from an individual budgets at home. Sometimes it takes adversity to really see what you can do. So you find a new notch.
Okay. Good answer. Thank you.
All right. Larry.
Okay, what skills or assets would you bring to the budget committee?
What skills and assets would I bring? Okay, so I've gone recently through 36 hours of mediation training through your community mediators. So that was training that I plan to implement in every aspect of my life because, better communication is better communication. So it allows for more collaboration, more productive solutions. The skills that I came from Deloitte & Touche in San Francisco. I'm a certified public accountant, though I haven't practiced for years, but I practice every day in my business. Those would all translate theoretically.
Thank you.
And Kelly.
That's what you feel are the three most important issues facing the city. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
three most
the
important
three
issues
most
facing-
important issues facing the city?
Yes.
I don't know if I'm qualified to
There's no
really
right or
list those
wrong
three.
answer,
Yeah,
just-
certainly. Mine would be as a resident at this point. And as a business professional here. I think maintaining some of the volunteerism that you've talked about, that speaks to the fabric of this community, and that's a partnership. It's keeping people working in this county, working in this city, living where they work, and being really invested in. So that's a really important thing in my mind is having people that live and work in this community and continuing to have that opportunity. I have a 4- and a 5-year-old, so kid services are huge for me. I've been harassing people about Sunday pool days. That's a small issue, of course. There's much larger ones in, but you're asking me on the spot, so that's what's coming out. I've been seeing like homelessness is something that I've seen just through the area here. You've just seen a lot of people having hard times around, and it's impacting them, and it's impacting businesses, and it's impacting individuals. I hear it in the families. I think those are priorities. I know it's on your radar, and I'm happy to hear that. But those are the first three things that come to my mind.
In McMinnville, we've always, even through the worst of the recession, had a certain level of discretionary funds to spend. How do you feel about spending those discretionary funds, and what would your emotions be if you felt like perhaps we were going over what we should go over? This is usually left to the budget committee.
How would I feel if we were spending more than we should? Is that the question, or?
Yeah. Or
It depends
maybe
on
not
what you're
spending
spending
enough.
on.
I mean, people come to us and ask us for money at
Yeah.
the end of the budget session or during the budget
Yes.
session. So we have a certain discretion to spend money.
Yeah. Okay. So I am generally perceived to be frugal by people who know me. So I generally err on the side of caution when it comes to spending, but I also recognize the importance of things that are necessary. So I mean, there's a balance. It totally depends on where money is being spent and how it's being spent. That's part of the thing that I love most about numbers is diving into that minutia and figuring out, what makes long-term sense, what's a short-term pleasure. That's kind of the fun of running a business. And from the city, it would be a whole new ballgame. I'd have to learn as I go.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
The question I have for you is, from your experience in the city, besides the pool, what other services do you feel are real vital services that you're really passionate about, that you would want to protect if you could, or?
Oh, well, okay, so coming from Vacaville, California, one of the shocking pleasures that I noticed was the relationship with water and light. The rates that exist in the city of McMinnville are a huge advantage and a draw for people to come to the city to both work and live. So maintaining a healthy relationship, having advantageous contracts like that is, of course, important. We enjoy great roads. Those are pretty pivotal. When you look at the family side of things, the rec department, the resources that are available. There are just so many avenues within the city. It would hard to really prioritize by list. And I wish I would have thought about it before this. I probably could have given you a better answer. But everything's kind of flashing.
No, you're doing fine.
Okay.
Were there any questions for us that you have about the committee?
So I don't know a lot about the existing makeup of the committee, and I apologize for that. I should have done better due diligence. But what do you think is a complement to the existing committee right now, the makeup of it? Like, where do you see gaps and needs?
Yeah, I was going to let Scott and Kelly answer those. They've been longtime members of that committee. Or, you know what I mean?
You're saying mold.
Yes.
Fred, right now, we have a real mix of, we have some financial, we have a banker, we have a builder, we have a lawyer, so we're pretty widespread. And, I think, if the question is, what is the makeup and maybe what we're looking for, I've got to think you've got to be someone that enjoys the financial piece. I mean, I can remember I've been on the committee for 20 years, and I can remember when we brought out the legal size computer paper, and all it was numbers, and it took us 5 hours to go through that, to a document today that is very narrative. Mm-hmm. And it tells a story, and it goes to each of the department heads to talk about what are the state of the union, what do I need, and what can I be looking forward to down the road. And so this narrative comes in, and then you look at the numbers, and then it's the department heads and our city manager that puts this together, and then they turn it over the hands of the council and our lay budget committee, and we spend time going through that and looking for anomalies. Why are we changing this direction in this area, and why are we putting more money in those? And those are the kinds of questions we ask. We're just another set of eyes to a process that has been set up, and our eyes can ask questions that someone would stop and say, I hadn't thought about that. And so that's really what it is. I will tell you that I don't think there's another committee from a city standpoint, and I'd even say the Planning Commission, that give you more insight into what the city's all about, because it is finances hit every aspect of this city, and if you can understand and comprehend the financial report, then you've got a good vision of where we're going, and then you learn the little stories behind it, and you read the narratives, and you walk away, and it's kind of like it brings you up to this level, and you could come into the council and understand what's going on by being on the budget committee. So I guess that's my read of we really want to have diversity. We want to have we want a person that's passionate about giving those skills back, to making sure that we haven't overlooked an area that's so critical to the city.
Yeah.
I guess what I would add is an interest in the whole process. There aren't a lot of people that really are into numbers, frankly. So anyone that brings that expertise and actually enjoys it, probably there are other roles in city government also for them. So,
Well,
Anything else?
no, I apologize. I didn't prepare any more questions, but I do know your candidates, and I feel like if you settle with any of the group, you'll be in great hands. They're both, two other candidates are wonderful people, for what that's worth. So
It's a nice position to be in, rather than having to go drag somebody in off the street. That we have such valid,
Or someone from the,
yeah, drawing straws tonight. Who gets no?
yeah,
No.
I appreciate being a candidate. It's very flattering, and yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks, Fred.
thanks, Fred.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up for discussion amongst the
Can we bring the
council.
others in now?
They're all here,
Okay, good.
so we can talk about them like they're not here.
Aha.
So yeah, any thoughts about the candidates in general? Larry, what do you think?
Well, I think it's like it's been stated, all three of them are qualified. I don't see, any one of them we wouldn't be disappointed in, I don't believe. I think that Matthew and Fred stood out a little bit more to me from the standpoint of their enthusiasm and desire to be involved in the community and their involvement in the community already with their families and the activities that they want to pursue and they want their families involved in. So, but no, I don't, at this point, don't have a preference one or the other. I think they're all great. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Larry. Kelly?
I would agree with Larry in that I think Matthew and Fred both seem to me to be more involved in the community. Great deal of expertise on both sides. I guess I'm a little reluctant to give a firm preference at this point.
Okay, we'll massage it around a little bit more. Alan?
Again, I echo everybody. All three of them are amazing. Thank you, all three, wherever you are out there. It's wonderful to have you here, and you're a great asset to the city, whether you're on this committee or not. It's just having your willingness to volunteer. I really like what Fred said about where would he fit in. What's the makeup of the committee? I've never heard that question to the council before. And to me, that shows a great initiative for teamwork, wanting to be a team player and work within the bounds of the committee. So I thought that was a great question that he gave to us. So, thank you.
So of these three candidates, who I also agree, we're very lucky to have three such qualified candidates. I think the educational and work experience clearly go to Meredith and Fred. They just have more experience in managing a budget. And a large budget at that. I also appreciated with Meredith that she currently works with multiple department heads, and so is used to understanding the intricacies that come along with having to manage multiple departments with diverse needs. I very much appreciated that all three candidates answered that their interest in this position was based in service to the city. And in terms of the most important role that each candidate saw, which I asked all three candidates the same question because I wanted to gauge their answers in that way. I, again, found that Meredith and Fred gave very succinct answers. Meredith saying that it was the Budgets Committee to role to care for the city, to look at the history and set guidelines moving forward. Fred clearly stating fiscal accountability. And I appreciate Matt's answer as well of questioning the working budget, but I don't know that I see that as the most important role of the Budget Committee. In terms of involvement or commitment to the city, I didn't see any difference one to the other. They're all vested here maybe in different ways, but they're clearly all vested community members. And I think just by the mere fact that they are applying for this position, it shows their commitment to the city of McMinnville.
Thanks. Scott?
Well, I truly feel that we can't go wrong any direction we go. You know, as I look at the skill sets of those that have been before us, we've got highly educated individuals in the area of finance and accounting. We've got larger industry represented, and we have entrepreneurship that's represented. Specifically, Matt, I was very impressed with your going out and talking to department heads. I think that gave you some insights that the others didn't have an opportunity to gain. That kind of communication is really important. You know, as I take a look at the makeup of our committee right now, you know, we've got smaller industry that is represented fairly well. And I think we're missing a little of that financial acumen that comes in a bigger corporation where the individual's leading a number of departments and a direction from that perspective. As I look at the committee, I see that as a gap, to be honest. And so, you know, Meredith or Fred, and I'll tell you, personally, I'm leaning a little bit toward Meredith. She's connected to the town, and I know these larger corporations, you don't have that glass that you can look in and say, I'm going to be here. Once you come to McMinnville, you're going to want to be here for a long time, but opportunities in the larger organizations take you away. So I think at this point, I'm leaning towards Meredith a little bit. But again, we couldn't go wrong at all with any of the choices.
Yeah. For me, I echo a lot of everything that was said. I think that the candidates were all really strong. Each time a candidate would come up, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the candidate. And then the next one would come up, oh, that's the candidate. So this is a tough decision to make. You know, I was impressed with Matt and Fred probably more. They just seemed to have a better understanding of the city. They were able to kind of talk about the things about the city. They seemed to have be better informed. Knowing Fred and the work that Recology does and how they really encourage their employees to volunteer, I think it's a great leader in Fred to kind of throw his hat in there as well. So I commend him for that. Looking at the makeup of the budget committee, I think Matt might fill an interesting niche that isn't currently there. He's a small business owner. I mean, we have that, but it's just this different perspective, especially when as a financial planner. And he's an insurance agent, but he's also a financial planner. And from my experience with the insurance industry, especially with financial planners, is that they often have to fix other people's problems. Life insurance, and especially as they're coming into the long-term planning for their life, often has to give them pretty bad news about their financial futures if they don't change things. And those are not easy conversations to have, especially when you're trying to engage a client. And just having that engagement, it just kind of tipped the scales for me a little bit. I think I think he'd be a really good addition to the committee. His perspective and his life experience, I think, would be very valuable to this committee. So we are nowhere. So any other thoughts?
Well, I have to say that I I always think it's wise to look to the people that have spent time in service in a specific area. And Scott, as we know, as you made clear, Kevin has been on that budget committee for a long time. So, no, but with, my instinct leans towards Meredith, and with Scott stating that as well, I would just put that out on the table that I think, as everyone has said very clearly, we would be well served by any of these candidates, but I believe that Meredith would be is the strongest candidate for us at this time.
All right. So Larry, you were kind of undecided before. Where are you kind of falling now?
Well, yeah, I'm still kind of where I was between Matthew and Fred, and they're both very qualified and bring a little slightly different perspective, but a good one. And I appreciate what you said about Matthew, because I didn't say it, but that's what I was thinking was I like that teamwork building attitude that he had, which is what it takes to put that budget together and make it work right. It's got to be teamwork. There's got to be give and take, and we got to analyze everything and bring it together. I really liked the way he came across in that area. I'm not saying the rest aren't capable of that. I don't know. They didn't express themselves in that area, but he happened to, and it really caught my attention. I really liked that part of it. So, but Meredith, yeah, very qualified. I don't know, I just didn't get good feedback from her for me. It was like she wasn't totally sure.
Oh. Kelly, what are your thoughts?
Well, in listening to everybody, they all three are incredibly good candidates. It's kind of like, gee, could we just add a few more? I think the one thing that stood out to me was Matt saying he went and spoke to the department heads. I just thought, wow, he actually is taking this pretty seriously. I was extremely impressed by Fred. I really liked the fact that you could come up with 3 different items. I know it was hard, but you did a great job on that. I really appreciate you doing it. I know Meredith just kind of came right up with 3 too, so I can't really ding her on that. I didn't feel as much enthusiasm coming from her, but it's true, she has a tremendous background. But I think, personally, I would probably go with Matt.
All right. Any other discussion?
I'll say something.
Yeah.
So these questions that were presented, as we know, are hypothetical in many instances. Some of them will come to fruition, some of them they won't even get close to dealing with on the committee, but they're a way of getting to know them a little bit. That's the purpose. So I was impressed with Matt's initiative of going to the department heads and talking. I don't know how many he talked to, but we'll take him at his word that he did that. Meredith, I was a little hesitant because of her hesitancy, even though she's obviously very intelligent and qualified. So Matt and Fred are my top. I like Fred because he's got the CPA knowledge and experience, and he's got the business acumen as a combination. I do like his attitude about teamwork and fitting in with working with others. So I can just say that I would tend to go with Fred at this point.
It's not going to happen.
Come on.
We mentioned drawing straws earlier.
Okay.
Okay, Walt, it's your turn.
I don't get a vote.
Oh, my God.
Well, we're pretty close.
You're an optimist, Kevin.
Boy, how do I want to proceed with this? I don't know if we're going to be moving ground at all by continuing the conversation, so I would entertain a motion. If there's a candidate that somebody would like to put on the table for a vote, we can
I move
start
to appoint Meredith Nelson for the role of committee of the budget, a member of the Budget Committee.
So it's proposed that Meredith Nelson be appointed to the Budget Committee. Do we have a second?
Second?
Got a second by Councilor Hill. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Nay. So that's 4-2. So the motion does not pass. Do I have another motion?
I move that we appoint Matt.
Second it.
So I have a motion to appoint Matt Nelson to the Budget Committee and a motion by Councilor Menke and a second by Councilor Yoder. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
3-3. All right.
I'll make the motion.
Yes?
Again, I'm really looking for someone that brings that bigger industrial feel to our committee, and so with that, I'd like to propose Fred similar to the Budget Committee.
Second.
How will this one go?
Just a quick reference here. Since that last one ended in a tie, it fails, and so there's no tiebreaker because the mayor's not here, so we'll just move on. Okay, thanks for the clarification. So we have a motion by Councilor Hill to appoint Fred Stemler to the Budget Committee and a second by Councilor Rudin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? It is unanimous.
Figure.
That's how you make sausage. All right, Fred, congratulations, Fred, for being the newest member of the Budget Committee. So you're going to be working with Marcia and her folks. So she will get you a really thick binder that you're going to get to play with. So, all right. Thank you, counselors, for that great exercise in government. That was good.
I think we're going to have a presentation on that later.
Okay. And to the other candidates, thank you so much. Please keep in touch with us, and as other opportunities present themselves to apply. Thank you.
As you can see, it's not an easy decision.
Okay.
But please, keep applying.
Next up on the agenda, we get to go through this again. We have two candidates for a position on the Historic Landmark Committee, J.W. Milligan and Rebecca
I did.
Swain.
So, you apply as method.
Yes, that's who it is. So we're actually going to, again, do this in alphabetical order. So that means, J.W., you're up first.
List on Fred.
Fred, I just didn't really say that.
Unanimous.
He said unanimous. I didn't say yes or no.
You didn't ask for no.
He asked for a no. I wasn't going to oppose unanimous.
All right, J.W., if you could, thanks for signing in. If just say your name for the record and address.
And by the way, I do have a speech. My name is J.W. Milligan. I reside 4 blocks from here at 624 Northeast 2nd, and my office is in the old Odell building on Ford. I grew up here. I put 670 properties on the National Register, over 1,700 acres. I put 3 homes that I've restored. They're now on the National Register. I grew up here. I remember, I must have been 5 or 6, going in the old First National Bank building, which was the Workman Bank. The oak floors, the bars. It's now a parking lot. I remember the 2 Arts and Crafts building next to the pool here. I can't remember, one of them was Taylor Dale or the hardware company. We have the Chamber building, but there was a mirror image next to it. It's a parking lot. I remember coming when Michael Book was a farm. I walked down the street. I grew up at 1225 Yam Hill Street in a very unassuming 1940s whatever house. And I remember talking to the farmer's kid there. A couple years. It was a golf course. I remember the barn. I remember going to a city council meeting. The city council had suppers there without telling us. We showed up when I was in high school. They no longer had private meetings. The barn burned down. The club has struggled. My son and I were at the board meeting on Monday, but it's regrowing. They're getting new members. They've got trees. I reminded my son that I'm older than the trees. I also remember as 8 years old, I delivered newspapers in town until I was 15. I picked up my extra papers at Fifth, and I believe it was Fifth, where Fifth goes across the tracks in an old garage that's still there. At that time, we had lumber mills, we had a granary, we had operating businesses there. They're all gone. However, something unique is happening. It's called the Granary, the Alpine, or what is the new name? Pinot Noir Quarter or something. It is rising from the ashes. Historic preservation is not just about buildings. It's about fabric. It's about character. It's why people come here. You don't know how many people come up to me and say, I moved here because this is the town of my dreams, but I'm worried on what's going to happen. Or people that have been here for a long time. But historic preservation is not about stopping change. It's about bringing the past into the future. Now, who am I? Well, I'm 58. I'm bald. I've been married 33 years. My wife will join me in town this summer after our other son graduates from high school. She's lived through 3 remodels of a 1920s house that was cut in half and moved in Salem, a 1900 Queen Anne Victorian of my grandmother's house in the Willamette district of West Lynn, and a 1908 Jacobean Manor in the Irvington district, which is now a historic district. What do I do now? I'm an investment advisor. I've been a stockbroker for 33 years. I've had my own firm for 20 years. And more recently, I did something called Wallace Bridge. My education, I graduated from high school here in 75, Lewis and Clark College in 79 in political science and economics. I did get towards a master's at Willamette. I've not left Oregon, except for travel. Before as an investment advisor, I also worked for Clackamas County. I did a lot of volunteer type work. Metro, when it was called CRAG. I worked for the Yamhill County Planning Department. I did the citizen participation. I did the ordinance stuff. I wrote the reports. I worked for LCDC. I worked with cities from Astoria to Ashland, from Newport to LeGrand. I reviewed those plans. I worked with the planners. I even approved your plan 33 years ago. And that means reviewing the historic ordinances. More importantly, I've been a volunteer. I told you I was coming to the front of the room. I've been on the board of the Historic Preservation League of Oregon, which is now called Restore Oregon. I founded an organization called Historic Advocates. And more important, I believe in volunteerism, okay? I believe in a process where you bring the ground up, not from the top down. Many times historic preservation is cocktail parties, social gatherings. This is about getting people involved. As an example of that, I wrote and sheltered through Salem's first National Historic District called the Gady Hill Bushes Park Historic Districts. It's 152 properties. And what's interesting, the newspaper opposed us at first until we had a talk. When we got to the city council, we had no opposition. It sailed right through. That district is still operated after 35 years. Salem now has 3 historic districts and celebrates that. I moved from Salem to Portland. In Salem, I was a liberal. I moved 45 minutes to Northwest Portland in 1987. Suddenly, I was conservative. Everybody was concerned about historic preservation because it means gentrification. They didn't want it. Within 6 months, though, my entire board was arrested, Northwest neighbors, for standing in front of bulldozers. The historic structures came down. They did not understand what would happen. I helped them before the Landmarks Commission, and I helped them get a grant for $50,000 or so to write it as volunteers. The Salem district was done with no city funds. Did not require city staff. You get volunteers. Now, why do I want to get involved in the Landmarks Commission? The Landmarks Commission has not met the last year. They met once when they got in trouble with the State Historic Preservation Office. They are charged with many things. They have not met. You have an inactive committee. As McMinnville grows, and I'm going to bring some of that growth with me, you're going to have pressures. I've looked at every single building downtown. Some of them are going to come down. Some of them maybe should. There's adaptive reuses. But I would like to get historic preservation out there, educate, inform. Your inventories are 35 years old. I can help you do that. One of the last things I did here recently, I did move back to the area 5 years ago. I never thought I would, but I'm going to be here the rest of my life. That's another 50 years, by the way. To do Wallace Bridge, a $100 million equestrian development. I've learned a lot in that process. You can ask your city attorney about what happened, but Sheridan really supports it. But we had massive support from senators, congressmen, but more importantly, we had the support of the neighbors. Once they understood and did the outreach, we had 67,000 people on our Facebook page. I can bring that here too. Now, you look at the commission. What does the commission do? One, it reviews building permits for alteration to historic landmarks or construction. I've done that. I've done it as a volunteer. I've done it as a staff. But you've got a problem right now. That ordinance does not hook to your inventory, and it's out of date and ineffective. Two, review demolition permits. Well, I've actually done that too. Three, evaluate and designate historic districts, buildings, structures, and sites. 630 homes, 1,600 acres, 3 homes of my own, and I've been through the process. 4, conduct surveys, inventories, studies of potential historic resources. I've done that as a volunteer. I've directed people to do that. 5, make recommendation to a planning commission and city council. I've done that in spades. Done the reports. I've sat there. I understand the process. 6, promote public awareness and appreciation of the city's historic resources. That's one of the most important things. A social network, a Facebook, a Twitter, all those fun things. I've got young sons. I've got 2 sons. One of them sits with me in the room here, Drew. He went to Linfield, which, by the way, my parents graduated from Linfield. In other historic preservations, I live history. If you came to my house, you'll find my dead relatives all over the wall. Back to including, what's her name? Can't remember her name. Elizabeth Jane Mattoon Wells. She came over on the wagon train. She was 6 years old. Fiery redhead with a club foot. The Indians came. They surrounded the wagons. They closed it up. The Indians opened her wagon. She spat at them. She spat at them. They thought they were all dead. But she had fiery red hair and a spirit that lives on and a club foot. I come from educators. I come from farmers. I come from ranchers. I can bridge all different levels for you. There's 3 things you can do. You can put me on the commission. Now, if you put me on the commission, I do ask for your support. It's not a notch on my resume. I've got a big resume. But I'm going to look for your support, your guidance, and your help. I will contact staff. I'll contact you. I'm not going to ask for your money. Second thing you can do, you can put both of us on the commission. Because right now there's actually 2 openings on the commission. You have a policy of rolling over people even if Rose can't get a hold of them. And I'm not 100% sure you can actually reappoint the existing person. I don't know if Doug's had a chance to look at that or not. But you can only serve 2 terms. But you also need to understand the commission you have right now has not met, has not done any of the 6 things in there. Okay, so you can appoint both of us. Another thing you can I've talked to people, you can expand the commission. The problem is you'd have a tie vote. So maybe you have to put 2 more, put all 3 of us on, then you have an odd number. So I also have 2 letters of recommendation. I don't know if you got those. One is from the former, both of them I've known for over 30 years. The retired deputy director of the Historic Preservation League, Washington County Historical Society, And then also, I think you know Carl Klusner, who's done a lot of historic books and here retired from the News Register. So, what do you want to ask me?
What's left?
There we go.
So Remy, thank you.
Absolutely. Mr. Milligan, thank you very much. Thank you for being so thorough and for all the work that you've done. Clearly, I'm not going to ask you any of the questions here because I feel like you've answered them or at least touched upon them. I very much appreciate your regular attendance at all of the council meetings. You're one of the few citizens, Mr. Davis as well, there's a few of you that come regularly, and I know that is greatly, greatly appreciated. You're a very blunt man, so I'm going to be very blunt with you. You clearly have the experience, you have the breadth of knowledge, you have everything you need to serve on this committee. But can you play well with others? Because it is a committee, and I repeatedly heard you say I. You told us what you did, but I didn't hear we. I didn't hear that in most of what you said. And so, being that this is a large committee and that you do have to work with staff, I hope you will take my bluntness only in response to yours, but it is a serious question, and that do you see yourself as being a person that can work well in a committee, especially coming to this committee, and perhaps it seems that you have a somewhat negative view of this committee coming in because they have not met for the last year, as you stated.
You want to know if I play well in the sandbox?
Yeah.
I'm 58. I do learn, and I've been learning all my life. And there's been a lot of experience. I've been on a lot of committees. And in Salem, we had a crew of volunteers that I worked with, and we worked extremely well. In Northwest Portland, we had a crew of volunteers that I worked with. On Wallace Bridge, we worked with an extensive crew of people. Yes, I can be blunt. I don't like to hide anything. But I work with volunteers all the time in neighborhood groups, serve on committees, serve as chairman, serve as a volunteer, serve as a grunt. And I can motivate people. And yes, I can work well in San, and I'm still learning. Ask my son. He's sitting back there, and I've changed over the last few years quite a bit. But it is a great question, and that is something to, yeah. Did I answer it? I love bluntness.
Kelly.
Good, then maybe you'll like a little more. Are you aware we have a planning department?
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I think
I'm planning to. I'm working up to it. Your comments indicate in all situations that you are leading this situation. Our planning department leads the situation in this town, not you.
Excuse me?
In a planning situation, the planning department leads the situation. As part of the committee, you're helping make policy determinations, other like type of decisions. But we hire people to be the planning people. You are basically stating you're going to do that. At least that's how I'm hearing it.
In order for historic preservation to work, if it comes from the staff, it will not work. I communicate with the staff. You can ask Martha, you can ask Doug. But they are hired staff. If you expect me to take the direction of the staff, not going to happen. But I will work with them. If that's what you want, you'll have an ineffective Landmarks Commission and you will not have the education. So if you're saying the staff is going to direct me, not going to happen.
Well, that's
But-
kind of what we expect from the land. They will direct.
Then you will not get the volunteers. There is a groundswelling going on in McMinnville of volunteers. They won't come down here to City Hall, but they will work with their neighbors, and I can do that. You represent, the staff does not represent the volunteers. I am saving you money, the committees are saving you money, and if you expect it all to come from staff, I'm not your right person. Do not vote for me.
Well, I have a concern that there would be a certain amount of headbutting and a concern that there would be a certain amount of dissension. And I don't know.
Out of dissension, out of discussion comes great ideas.
No, and I agree. That can happen. I'm just rather leery.
Okay,
Your
let's put it back.
presentation.
Let's say, what's the Landmarks Commission done in the last 2 years?
I don't
With
know.
staff direction? 0.
Maybe there was 0 to be had.
No, they have 6 things to do. That's not true.
All right, thanks. Larry, do you have a question?
No, I have no further questions. I don't agree with the way this has gone simply because we brought you in here to interview you, and we really haven't been allowed to do that. So I got no further questions.
Ooh.
JW, you know, we talk about a lack of movement on the Historic Preservation Committee. You talked about the things they need to do. If you were put on that committee, what would you see the priority of that committee other than the 6 things? How would you work to get where we need to be? I guess I'm looking at how would you approach the standing committee, working with staff to get where we need to be from your perspective? What are the priorities? Does that make sense?
Well, the first priority is to get to know each other. Talk, communicate, get together. They can get together at my house, at their house. So the first thing is to get to know each one of the committee members and ask them what do they want to see the committee do. Talk about what it's required to do, what it wants to do. Communicate with staff. I talk to staff all the time. But I don't expect staff to be there at the meeting. So I guess the first thing is communicate.
Okay.
Second thing is to educate, come up with a plan of action, meet on a regular basis. Then start doing some of the things that are missing, the 35-year-old inventories. I can work with a lot of groups. I can work with developers, neighbors, environmental groups, Thousand Friends of Oregon, which you guys have a hard time. I can work with them. And this commission needs to work with the State Historic Preservation Office, all the different historic committees. But find out what the other members want, how often they can meet. But I will be pushing for them to meet.
Thank you.
Alan, did you have anything?
Yeah. Thank you, JW. Yeah, I echo Councillor Drapkin here of being here all the time with your son most of the time in our council meetings. Thank you for that. And you have come on pretty strong. That's unusual. I don't think I'd eliminate you as a candidate because of that.
Thank you.
But I think there is a great deal of work to be done in our city. There are, you stated quite well, that there is a lot of work to be done downtown. There's lots of opportunities for sure. And I guess it's a matter of direction on what kind of fast track we want to get on, because with your energy and your experience, the pace would be picked up. I get the feeling of that.
Correct.
I
I didn't make no bones about that.
So, you know, that's good in a way. I like that.
Thank you.
Definitely things would change. Yeah. And you're highly qualified.
Thank you.
So that's all thanks.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Larry, you want to grab the next candidate? Hi. All right, Rebecca, if you could sign in and then state your name for the record and your address.
Okay, my name is Rebecca Quant, and I live at 620 Southwest Taft Street in McMinnville.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks.
We're going to ask questions, and we'll just go around the room. So, Alan, you want to get us started?
Yes. Thank you for being here again. We just can't get enough of these applications.
I'm usually in my jammies by now, so I'm sure, yeah.
Oh, good for you. You're not even 30 yet, probably. That's not my question. So you work down at the MDA.
I do.
And we've seen you down there and appreciate the hard work you do down there. So you've got certain skills and assets you'd like to incorporate in your professional life and bring that into this particular committee. So could you explain that to the council?
Yeah, so I've been working at the McMinnville Downtown Association for about a year and a half. I moved to McMinnville a year and a half ago, June of 2014, and fell in love with the community. I have a background in urban planning and geographic information systems from the University of Washington, and I have a master's degree in historic preservation from Clemson University in South Carolina. I wrote my graduate thesis, actually, which is really interesting with all of the urban renewal planning going on within the community. I wrote my graduate thesis on tax increment financing and its impact on historic districts, which I think could play a really pivotal? Well, I look towards my mentor. Can you tell? Pivotal role and kind of the future of McMinnville.
All right. Remy.
Okay.
Alan,
How
do you
about
have
your
another question?
skills?
My skills.
Yeah. What would you want to bring into this?
What would I want to bring in? So that's a great question. So I have a strong skill set in working with committees. I've dealt with a lot of committees here in McMinnville, and I think that I'm easily approachable. Which may not sound like the most interesting skill set to have, but I think that it's really crucial to have someone who has the ability to work with diverse stakeholders within the community and different community members. We all have different opinions, and we all have different concepts that we want to bring together. So I think having someone help be that voice is really important, especially in preservation. In terms of my background, obviously, I'm technically an architectural historian, so I think that I bring a strong skill set with that. I helped design the Main Street guidelines for the city of Charleston, South Carolina. So I think that that's also something very important. While they're a bigger city, it's still very applicable to McMinnville.
Oh, beautiful city.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Remy.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for your interest in the service. You said you served on lots of committees. Are you on lots of committees right now?
And I say I serve. I work. Technically, it's part of my job. But I do. I deal closely with our design committee with McMinnville Downtown Association. Works heavily with downtown, obviously, and all of our design guidelines, promotions as well. I've dealt with committees before in Charleston, and I keep referring back to that because I was a really strong influence on my graduate degree. So I dealt strongly with their economic improvement committee. I was one of their advisors there when I wrote my tax increment financing graduate thesis, which was quite boring, to be honest with you. It's not really the most inspiring read. And then I deal with, I'm also heavily involved within the community as well on some certain committees for Kiwanis. I was on a smart reader committee for a little bit as well, so.
Okay. Do you see the landmark committee or the historic landmark commission as being a really actionable committee, or what is some of the work that you would hope to do as a part of in the term of your service?
Yeah, that's so I actually sat recently on the CLG process was just being reviewed, or gets reviewed every 5 years. So Ron Pomeroy invited me to sit on the committee along with Cassie Sollers, and it was really interesting to kind of see the progress that committee has made within the past 5 years and where those gaps were. And I saw some of the things that I could bring to that committee. For example, using GIS to be mapping some of these historic properties within the city of McMinnville. I'm a very visual person, so I think that having more graphic design with preservation is really important. I also bring, not that age is a factor at all, but I do bring a younger skill set to it, and I think that it's a little bit more energy. Millennials have learned preservation in a different manner than, per se, my professors, and I think bringing that and making preservation interesting for young children, up to teenagers and up to people my age, 30, 40, is really, really important because we're the ones shifting into that.
Okay, and then just lastly, just kind of your view on how this committee operates. Do you see this as, would you be looking to staff to take a lot of direction from staff about what you would be taking on and what you would be working with? Or would you be looking to source your own ideas and give those to staff to follow or to work with you on?
Yeah, no, I think that that's great. I've already been looking at a few grants that I think would be very applicable to this committee. But I think being a team player is really important. So obviously I'm going to have a lot of ideas and some that may work and some that may not, but I think just having an open dialogue. Obviously I would not be on this committee or hoping to be on this committee without putting in a lot of my time. I have no problem at all if someone sees a skill set that I might be able to fill to say, Rebecca, could you please take this on? But I hope that we could have that dialogue and say, let's get these conversations starting and where is the need for preservation in McMinnville?
Thank you.
Rebecca, thank you again for being here tonight and for a lot of work you've already done, because I know you've been very involved at the MDA and bringing forth some of the historical nature of the downtown in the publication that was just presented, and that was a great job. I really appreciated looking at that. First question I have is, why are you interested in serving? And you may have addressed it, but very specifically, why do you want to be on this committee? And then what specific contributions do you see that you can bring forward?
Why do I want to be on this committee? Because I really do feel I can bring a lot of skill sets to this committee. I think I can make a big difference. I'm definitely high impact, and I think that that's probably something that this committee could use. They've done a tremendous amount of work, and I know that if given that dialogue and given, that back and forth between where they see the vision of this committee going, I know that I could be a proven person to really be able to make a big impact. I tried to make a big impact with the McMinnville Downtown Association in the short time I was there, and anything worth doing is worth doing right. So that's really why I want to be on this committee. The skill sets that I could bring are, I have a wide knowledge. While I have only been here for a year and a half, I've been extremely immersed into the community, and I've tried my hardest to become familiar with different stakeholders and different community members, public officials, anyone involved, residents. And I think that that's really important. And I think having that, be able to bridge those different communities together and have someone be able to be that voice, like I said before, is really, really crucial, especially in preservation.
Talk to me a little bit about the passion that you have for this. I mean, we just went through the budget committee, and some of us have great passion for finance. Others have great passion for historical types of things. Talk about your drive for that. What fuels it, and what are the limiting factors to that? I mean, will you be a driving force, and how do you see driving a committee that maybe has been there for a number of years? Tell me what that dynamic might look like.
Yeah, I think that that's really important. It really all started with, and I will keep this very short, but it really started, I run marathons, and I know this sounds like a tangent, but running through cities really made me fall in love with the architecture. So ever since then, for the last 15 years, I've really loved walking through a downtown and seeing what has been preserved and what hasn't. Working at the McMinnville Downtown Association, and honestly, I've worked on the historicmac.com project, but I think interviewing the community members in this community that are 85, 90, 100, and seeing their stories and their oral histories and their love and their passion, that's exactly the kind of thing that we need to be capturing, and that's exactly the stories that we need to be telling. So that's why I love preservation, and I love the social aspect of it, along with the architectural features. And I think that that's something that needs to be told. Well, we can't save everything. We can't, and we shouldn't. But we can preserve that into a certain box, or at least mark it and take a snapshot of it and say this was what it was.
One last question, and it's one I've asked everyone else. You don't have a crystal ball, You've been here for a year and a half, and you're working with the MDA. What's your outlook of being here in McMinnville? For how long? What do you see in the future for yourself?
No one moves to McMinnville single. So I did, and I love it. I plan on staying here for sure. I want to buy a house. This is the community for me. I love McMinnville. I love the opportunities that it's been able to bring for me. McMinnville's really allowed me to grow, and this is going to sound so corny, but I really feel like I've come into my own in this community, and I know that the skill sets I have with preservation and with architecture and urban planning and economic development, with everything going on with Visit McMinnville and everything going on with urban renewal, it's a really crucial time to be paying attention to preservation, and I think that I can bring that interest to this community.
Thank you.
That's it? Okay. Larry?
Yeah, thank you. If you could raise yourself up about 20, 30,000 feet in the air,
I'd like to
take
see
a look
that.
at the
That'd be-
city. Yeah, just float up there a little bit, and do a little dreaming. What would be your view of the city 5, 10 years from now, just looking at the total picture as it relates to the historic landmarks?
I've thought about this a lot, actually. There's a lot of neighborhoods that haven't been documented in the city of McMinnville that are historically significant, and I think they should be paid attention to. Mid-century modern is also technically historic now. Anything over 50 years old is technically historic, and we need to be paying attention to that.
Watch your tongue there.
Yeah.
Mid-century modern.
In a dream world, I would love for you all to have a preservation planner on staff. I think that that's really crucial. But in the meantime, your committee serves a really strong role.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you feel you have not been able to share with us up to this point that you would like to?
These are all very different questions from the budget committee. I was trying to base these off of the budget committee questions. Dang it. No, I think that this is honestly my absolute passion is preservation, and I think it's so important, like I said, preservationists tend to be the no people. They tend to be the people that you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's not the case at all. I think having that transparency in making preservation and all of the tax credits that are available, making all of that digestible for real estate agents and developers and citizens and community members, I think we're missing that a little bit. I think that there's a little bit of a transparency gap personally, that I would love to be able to play a part in and to be able to help people through that process. So I just love preservation.
You have a degree in urban planning?
Yes. Oh, urban planning and historic preservation, are those not the two yin and yangs of the world? Right?
I know there's similarities there, but tell me about that. How does this work into your overall plan with historic preservation?
Yeah, I think it was, actually, I kind of feel like I'm lucky because I feel like I have an undergraduate degree in urban planning from UW, and I learned all about modern buildings and new ways to develop cities, and I think that that's great, and I think that's wonderful. And then I took a lot of classes on preservation, and I decided to get my master's degree in it, and I think that's really great. But I think that's the issue, is they're not yin and yang, and they're not oil and water, and that they all really are interconnected, and I think that that's kind of something that the city, any city in general, should really be focusing on, is that you can have new development and preservation, and they can be adaptable with each other. Did I answer your question, or did I ramble? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I had another one.
Yeah.
Rebecca?
Yeah.
Going back to one statement you made about the committee serves a very strong role. Were you referring to the existing committee that we have in McMinnville?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Could you explain that a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, so I think that we have a wonderful array of people who sit on the committee right now, and I think that they're all extremely qualified, and they all bring very different perspectives, which I think is what's so great about all of the committees that McMinnville has. It does play a huge role. We get phone calls all the time at the Downtown Association from real estate developers or, active citizens or a visitor from out of town saying, what does historic mean? What does that mean to be on the National Register? What does that mean to not be on the National Register? that's what the Historic Landmarks Committee means to me. It means that it's really that one area where everyone can go and just have a complete and utter understanding of what preservation is, and to not to say people are scared of it at this point, but I think people are just very unaware of what it means. And I think making that really clear and making that really transparent and easily digestible is the role that I see the Historic Landmarks Committee being.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, any questions for us?
Yeah, I did have a question. So where do you see the Landmarks Committee, you know, if your 30,000-foot view in 5 years, what is your goal for this committee?
Any thoughts from Alan?
I do. I have a thought. Because we've got such an invigorated downtown with a great future. It's been recognized nationally already. And yet I still feel like we're missing something. Historic preservation is a big part of this community. And yet there doesn't seem to be a real thrust to move things along. Mm-hmm. That's why I asked the question. And so in 5 years, I guess, whatever your question was, I would like to see something change, some action changed in conjunction with staff and city council to move the downtown forward in a major way that is conducive to our long-range goals of our downtown. I think it's an integral part. So.
Any other additions?
In the urban planning portion of it. That McMinnville needs in that area. I mean, I know it's not with historic preservation necessarily, but you're right, it does go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having that aspect is a nice additional asset.
Larry?
Yeah, we have some beautiful historic buildings in town and we need to preserve them and we need to promote them. But we also have urban development that needs to take place, and we need to grow as a community in order to be able to provide goods and services for our citizens. So, yeah, there is a commingling of those two that is very important, and we need to promote and to move forward on both ends.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll open it up to discussions or a motion, whichever you prefer. Alan?
I'll open some discussion here.
Okay.
But it's going to be a good discussion. So, for my feelings about it, we've got some qualified candidates. One is definitely more qualified than the other. That would be JW, in my mind. Qualified, experience. Hands down. And I think he would bring to the table energy and passion. He's a long-time McMinnville man. He's liked to stay here for a long time. And I guess it's a direction of what the city council wants for the future of McMinnville. I mean, I think it's a big question, I really do, because of the efforts that have gone into the MDA and other organizations downtown to preserve. There's a lot of buildings down there just waiting for something to happen, I think. I'd like to see a lot of activity. I think it would promote tourism. It would promote enhancement of the beauty downtown. And I just like the attitude of JW. I appreciate him being here all the time, not on this issue, but on everything else. So he did come on strong. He'd have to change, like you said he could. There'd have to be a lot of inner workings. The city council for sure would give some direction and policy with staff, and so my thoughts are leaning towards him. And go from there.
I'll go ahead, Scott, and then Remy, to you.
I think as a council, we probably ought to stand up and take a little bit of ownership for this historic landmark committee. It's a committee that I'm aware of it, but I'll be very honest, in going on 12 years, I've never had an opportunity to go to a committee meeting. It's something that we have talked about in other committees, because we're doing downtown and we're doing Visit McMinnville, and I'm on all of those committees. So JW, I really thank you for bringing to light, you know, a committee that needs to have a light or a torch lit a bit. I, like Alan, would say that your experience is state known. It's state class. I would say that you are a driver. I'm still not convinced of the ability to partnership with the city, and I'm not going to put Doug or Martha on the table to ask what those dealings have been like, but at the same token, I'm not convinced how good of a partner you can be. I love the drive. I love the passion, but it may be too passionate for where we are right now. I get really excited when we can bring people together, but I get really put off when we alienate people that are trying to give to this community. We're all in different levels, and I know, you know, I've had a lot of opportunity to give to this community, whether it be through the MDA or whether it be through the chamber or the library or budget committee or city council. I'm able to give a whole lot more today. I thank people that didn't shoo me away years ago when I was doing a full-time job and all the other things I did. And so I'm not convinced yet, and I wish there was a way that I could just look in your eye and say, I know where you're at and I know what you're going to do. I'm still a little scared. But by far, you have the passion, you have what we need to have happen in this community to preserve our historical roots, especially as we're moving forward in the next 10, 15 years. We've got to get on the ball. And Rebecca, you've come in with a lot of passion and a lot of drive. You've got education, maybe not as much experience, but I see you coming in and being able to move that needle. If we could have a little of both, I would really like that, or see how to do a partnershiping from that perspective. But those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Scott. Kelly.
Oh, please.
Listen to two very passionate people tonight.
Microphone.
Oh, once again, sorry. We've listened to two very passionate people tonight. And though I did take somewhat of exception to your attitude, I, without a doubt, have to accept the fact that you are obviously a very effective person and a leader, JW. And thank you for coming tonight. I do really appreciate it. I don't know that I necessarily have come to a decision on anything. I know that we could use people that have the experience that you have. And I would like, personally, to see you use that experience for us on our landmark committee. There was some discussion prior to the meeting tonight that, you know, we needed to kind of talk about several other aspects of this. I'm not going to be able to talk and do this at the same time. So I didn't mean to be a total downer to you, JW. I tend to favor this young lady. I would like to see her in this position simply because of the urban planning aspects and the fact of her education. But I know she doesn't have your experience, and I know she doesn't have a lot of your connections, which would be very helpful to the Historic Landmark Committee. So even though we may be voting one way or the other tonight, I would tend to say don't give up on us. And I certainly appreciate your participation at all levels.
Larry.
Yeah, JW, I probably owe you an apology for coming across a little bit blunt earlier. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your interest, and I appreciate your experience and your background. It's fantastic. You've accomplished a lot. I guess one of my feelings is that you've accomplished a lot in Portland, you've accomplished a lot in Salem, you've accomplished a few things in Willamina, of which I'm very familiar with. But this is McMinnville, and we seem to operate differently than anybody else. And I'm more concerned about how the fit between current committee members and who we're adding to it. Are we getting the right fit? It doesn't have to be the smartest, most educated, or experienced person, but if it's the wrong fit, we're not going to go anywhere with it either. And I guess because of that, and knowing people of our community a little bit more laid back, not quite as aggressive as some, I guess I would lean towards Rebecca because I think she would just be a better fit with the existing committee. I realize she's lacking on experience and a lot of other accomplishments, but that isn't what gets the job done. And we have a huge job ahead of us that we need to get to work on.
All right. And my thoughts.
Remy.
Oh, did we not? We skipped you, Remy?
Skip me.
I went before her.
And I told her that I would come back, and I totally forgot. Remy, thank you.
That's quite all right. So, I agree we have two very qualified candidates and for two very different reasons. And truthfully, I think that if both these people could serve on this committee, that it would do the committee a lot of good. I think that if Rebecca could bring the grants that she's already been researching, and JW could bring in his history and his connections and his get-to-work attitude on things, I think it would serve the committee very well. I understand that there are, it's not that simple. Sometimes those logical decisions that aren't that simple in government are very frustrating. And JW, I think you would be very frustrated at times. This is difficult because you have different and yet similar skill sets, or you have different skill sets, but that both apply in a very positive and similar way. I have great concern, Mr. Milligan, that if you do not show deference to our city staff, who are very well educated and who are very smart people and who we do rely upon, that is important. I do have concerns that I would say you probably ticked off, and it took me a good while to come up with ticked. But you ticked off at least half of this council in your interview. So, there's a real consideration in that. And so, boy, I wish this was more clear. And I'm not typically a person that vacillates, but I am concerned about the aspect of will you be able to work with this committee? By the way, my mother serves on this committee, so you would have to watch the way you spoke to her. I would never hear the end of it. But I do really think that you both would bring a lot to this committee. So. This is very difficult, and a testament to some of the frustrations that I think you might feel. We're doing these 2 appointments tonight, and we've been in this meeting for almost 2 hours, right? So
They're important.
they are very important, but it's all important. It's all important, and we cannot always move at the pace that we want to move. So here I am with, I would really like to see both of these people serve on this committee. That's truly where I am. I know that we can't do it like that, but.
For a second. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
I'd like to say something real quick, if I could.
Oh, go right ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm not the mayor, so I actually get a say in something. So, as I heard about this committee, it sounds like, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, it's really an advisory committee to your staff, correct? And they perform duties around this specific topic for your department. Would that be an accurate way to describe it?
They're really an advisory committee to this body as well as our planning commission on issues of historic preservation.
Okay. So I don't want there to be this takeaway from some of the things that were said tonight that the shortcomings of this committee is a result of the shortcomings of the committee or the shortcomings of the planning department. It's we, as the city council, set the priorities of those departments and would set the priorities for that committee. Doug.
Council President, in all deference to Mr. Milligan's representation this evening, this committee has been very busy and has accomplished quite a bit the last 4 or 5 years. I'd be happy to share those accomplishments with this group at another meeting. But the short version is we've become a certified local government. We have acquired 2 grants in that time. We have updated our inventories in that time. We've reviewed the Chaos Building for their conformance and a host of other buildings for historic preservation compliance in the downtown and elsewhere in the community.
All right. Thanks for that clarification, Doug. You know, there's a lot that can be done, and there's a lot that still needs to be done. And honestly, it wasn't until tonight that a lot of these things were kind of brought before me. And I think as we go into our goal session, we might be thinking about things a little bit differently. And I appreciate JW for bringing these things to our attention. I think you had 2 ways you could have approached this tonight. You could have inspired us to do some things, or you could have shamed us into doing some things. And I think you may have taken the shame out. I know you can inspire people. You can't get a whole committee arrested in downtown Portland without inspiring them. But you took the wrong approach tonight. And since so much of the direction is going to have to come from this council, and his initial engagement with us on this, it kind of is a little off-putting for me right now. So my personal feelings, we would appoint Rebecca. And we're going to have an opening possibly coming up again soon, and let's see how the interview changes at that time and see if things can work themselves out. But that's kind of how I feel about it.
Are you making a motion, or can you?
I will entertain a motion if there's one to be had. I'd rather do that.
I will do that motion
Your motion is?
to appoint Rebecca to the Historical Landmarks Committee.
So Councilor Menke moves that we appoint Rebecca to the Historical Landmarks Committee. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilor Yoder. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So we have, let the record show that we have a, what is it?
I would have voted nay, too.
4-1 in favor of Rebecca being appointed to the committee. So Rebecca, welcome to the committee. Congratulations. So Doug will be in touch and get you all the information you need to get on the committee and get going. So thank you very much. All right. Moving on to, you need a break? You good?
Scott?
Old business. So we have a presentation coming to us from a local organization, Zero Waste. And just a bit of background, the City Council, during the last budget cycle, we approved a $5,000 grant as part of the 2015-16 budget to Zero Waste, contingent on them raising matching funds. And so we have Steve Iverson and Patricia Faye Marshall and Ramsey McPhillips will be presenting to us some ideas they have for the council. So, thank you for being here. And if you could state your name and address for the record.
Sure. I'm Ramsey McPhillips, and I live at 13,000 Southwest McPhillips Road here in McMinnville, and I'm the president of Zero Waste McMinnville. So the 3 of us are here. 2 of us are going to give very quick assessments of both what's been going on and our current situation with the matching grant. And then Steve is going to go forward with a longer presentation about the possibility, a presentation about replacing the plastic bag, which is one of the advocacies that we're very much interested in. So I'm sure you saw us all this summer groveling around in garbage pails at all the events. And that was really fun and extremely successful, considering that we really didn't know at first what we were doing. We got some great green vests and a very representational Zero Waste OK logo. And we started with all of the events going from Alien Days, Turkey Rama, International Pinot Noir celebration. We did every farmer's market. We did the 4th of July with the Chamber of Commerce. We did a little outside of McMinnville, the Yamhill Bounty County, Susan Sokol-Blosser. And what we did is we not only groveled and packaged and sorted and recycled, we measured everything. And the reason we did that was to get a benchmark of what the first year of where people were, sort of a soft introduction to find out just exactly at what place McMinnville is with the way they deal with their trash in the event sector. So that is a diversion rate. Basically, we could add up the poundage and tell you what was diverted away from Riverbend landfill. And that is a number. And the numbers for zero waste, by definition, is 90%. And as you know, our mission as an organization is to get McMinnville to that 90% diversion rate in 10 years. We've been at that for 2, so now we only have 8 left. So these events went from 36% diversion rate all the way up to some in the 90s. One of the events, we literally had, 500 people, and we walked away with 1 black garbage bag. It's really impressive. So I really can't state enough how great it's been to have the support of the community, because the volunteers that we've amassed, upwards of 400 over the course of the summer, and all of the hours that we put in at every farmer's market and all those long events, planning, weekly meetings, et cetera, has been embraced fully by the community, we can tell. It's really, really great, and we really feel inspired to go at it again this next summer, where now that we have numbers, we're going to be working with the event coordinators and work with them to source out products that are less likely to be thrown away, to do better with our food waste, which incidentally all ended up at my farm. My chickens get first pick at it, and then I mix it in with compost generously donated, or bark dust generously donated by Recology. And then that is going to be auctioned off as a compost to some of the benevolent organizations in town in one of our events when it finally cures. I'm going way too long. But anyway, I just am so excited about it. And so here's Patricia Fay to tell you about the money.
So 2 years ago, we started a Sustaining Circle program, kind of modeled after the NPR. You know how that bugs you when they ask for money over and over. But we've had an amazing response from this community. We have 55 Sustaining Circle sponsors and or donors who have given us up to enough money so that we're ready for you to write us a check.
Excellent.
Good. Excellent.
We'll have Marcia audit that and make sure that.
I have the deposit slip from First Federal with me, if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, we actually have over $6,000 in the bank right now, but I just wanted to comment that also, besides the 55 donors and Sustaining Circle sponsors, that the Downtown Association awarded us $500. And we've been working closely with them and closely with Recology, and it's just been a real pleasure. I mean, I never would have thought that my retired career would be sorting garbage, but I actually, I enjoy it. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's very satisfying, and I'm delighted to be part of this group. We're all so committed. It's wonderful to work with a group of folks that are as committed as we are, and we have a lot of fun.
And now it's to me.
Now it's to you.
I'm Steve Iverson. I live at 1033 Southwest Courtney Laney Drive here in McMinnville. My job tonight is to make a request of the council. So on behalf of Zero Waste McMinnville, we request that the council seriously consider starting the process to investigate the feasibility of replacing plastic disposable one-use bags with recyclable paper bags or reusable bags. And furthermore, we, Zero Waste McMinnville, offer our services to facilitate this in any way possible. And we feel that our natural connection with the city would be through the Sustainability Committee, because we already have an excellent relationship with Eric Grimstad, who's the chair of the committee. So you see the, what I call ban the bag, that's shorthand for replacing plastic bags. And I'm not going to go through this in detail, but I wanted to point out first that 4 cities in Oregon have passed ordinances so far: Portland, Eugene, Corvallis, and Ashland. Forest Grove, interestingly enough, is well on the way to achieving a council vote early next year. So they're close. I'm not going to dwell on the next 2 blocks. I'd like to jump to the bottom of the page, which is just off the page. So for McMinnville, we would propose a process that's kind of a blend of the processes other cities have used to get to a vote of the council on whether or not the bag should be allowed or not. And so this is a proposed process that we spend the next few months doing outreach to businesses, and these would be businesses that have a stake. In other words, they deal in plastic bags. And other stakeholders, like big groceries, who are maybe not part of the business associations here. We would work closely with the chamber and with the downtown association to make sure their members knew about this and could give us positive feedback on it. We would organize a public forum in conjunction with the city, to the extent the city wanted to be involved in this, let's say April, and we would present a draft ordinance that would again be a blend probably of what the other cities have done. And then in the next 6 months, we would do further business outreach, and we would tally all the responses we got from any businesses we contacted. And leading up to a second public forum sometime in October, where the tweaks would be put into the ordinance to make it more specific to what the situation would be here in McMinnville. And then this would be discussed in detail at a public forum in October. And hopefully, soon after that, the council would be ready to vote on it. And, you know, we put an aspirational date here for the enactment of the ordinance, Earth Day 2017.
Perfect. All right, any questions? Thank you.
I do, under, the January to April 2016, the business reach out and the stakeholder meetings. I hope the council is a piece of that educational process, coming before us and getting the materials that you're going to be presenting to help us understand the ramifications of it. We love to learn as a council, and that's how we grow.
Certainly.
So my understanding is that you would like the council to be doing the business outreach and stakeholders meetings, not that you would be doing the business outreach and stakeholder meetings.
What we would love to do is coordinate through Eric. I know Eric is sort of has a lot on his plate these days in terms of sustainability, and maybe he isn't the right person, but he is the person that is the figurehead within your bureaucracy right now. But it would be great to discuss with him how the city would like to do exactly that. We don't know. We're here just to propose that we would like to form a partnership, perhaps work with Eric, who can then work with you to decide how much you want to do outreach, how much we should do outreach. Maybe a committee should be formed where we do the outreach jointly. But what we would very much like to do is partner with the city, because we feel it will be a lot more effective and powerful if it's done as a partnership rather than just Zero Waste coming forward and doing it, or just the city doing it.
Yeah, Remy, just they came and talked to us earlier, and we did ask them if they could get us feedback from the 3 big, Albertsons, Roth, and Safeway. So we did ask them that would be very helpful if they could go do that and get that information to kind of give us a thought about where's the appetite for this bag from some of our larger commercial industries.
To generally answer that question, those 3 entities and the other 4 communities which already have banned the bag are very happy with their systems. So that's why we felt that we could go forward. We did some research ourselves. We didn't want to propose something that was just an advocacy that we believe in that didn't have a chance. So we really feel as though, given the political makeup of McMinnville, that there's been a big conflict here and we want some positive things to happen. That this is a good thing to look into. And we're not here forcing it down anyone's throat. We really want a forum where everything's discussed. Before we leave, I know you have other agenda items. One quick thing that Patricia Fay forgot to mention, the $10,000. So what we're going to do with the $10,000, as you remember, are these energy audits, and we have dedicated the $10,000 to hire waste audits. The $10,000 is going to be used using Linfield students, to do these audits along with us for a city block in downtown McMinnville, Marilyn Warwick's building, which has Kern's Gallery and the cafe and residences. It'll be sort of a pilot project. And with Recology, who already does waste audits, but we're going to trump it up a little bit. And then we will have a package, having used the great money that you have and the money that we've raised, to show how that could be expanded throughout McMinnville over the next 8 years to get to our 90% diversion rate.
I think this is a really positive. I think the work that you've done is amazing, especially the diversion is extremely impressive. And, as we kind of look at your schedule, I mean, I don't know that the city could meet that schedule if a partnership were to be formed exactly, but I know that we could. She says we could. She says what she knows. But I know that I'm not alone in saying that this is something that the council is interested in. It meets a lot of other things that are being worked on, and a lot of other concerns and considerations that I think all of the residents of McMinnville and Greater Yamhill County have. And so, if at the very least, I know it'll come up in our goal setting meeting in January at the very least.
And I think that that's a great place to have it. And, we would lean very heavily on these guys. We're not going to go out and hire somebody to do this. We're going to lean on them to do the staff work.
We'll do all the work. We're just here to make sure that we're not pressing you to do something you don't want to do. You throw it at us and we'll do it.
Our goal setting is January 29th, January 30th. So we'll talk about it then, but I know you have a lot of support on this council.
Great.
We really do want input from the council on directions. We're just the volunteer hours that we're going to apply to this, but any involvement the city wants is fine with us.
When I was in college, I spent a lot of time at our landfill, and not as a hobby, but as working construction, we took a lot of stuff up there. And in fact, one year I got a Christmas card. It was a trash bag with a bow on it. It said, "Thanks for all you've given us this year." So I had a lot of time at the landfill, and one thing I noticed when I was up there is that they have a crew full-time just walk around picking up plastic bags that blow out of the hole. And that's a huge problem, especially with its proximity to the river. I have a feeling if we were to go down there and inspect that river bottom, it would be full of plastic bags. And so I really believe...
I was on the Hill 3 months ago.
Yeah, so this is something that we really need to take seriously. And yeah, Alan?
It was a year ago, I believe, you came before the council.
We were here last in May.
What's that?
We were here in May.
In May,
the
for
budget.
for the budget, yeah. And did we give you any money?
No, well, you said you'd give us $5,000 if we
match.
raised $5,000.
A matching grant.
We've been really impressed with what's happened in the last 7 months then. So congratulations, you've followed through on some of the concerns or wishes of the community. So it's looking good.
Well, thank you very much for the money. It really was inspiring to go for it.
Well deserved.
So what direction does your staff need from us right now?
We can keep working with these folks, absolutely no problem at all. But I do think because one of the major goals that you've had year in, year out deals with sustainment, growth, those kind of things. And I think, like Remy talked about, this would be a great discussion of where we want to go. As a council, in addition, we're going to talk Fred Stimler here about some of his recycling and options and how to divert material to a landfill. So I think there's a nugget here to be kind of reaped and sowed for the council.
So in the short term, would going and speaking with those 3 entities they previously mentioned that have good programs working in other cities, would that be a good short term until goal setting?
Yeah, I think that would be excellent. We could pull some of that information and actually maybe have it ready for the council if you'd like to talk in depth about this at any particular time, either before or at the goal session. I think that would be a really good idea.
The great thing is that we don't have to reinvent the wheel here.
Yes.
Perfect. There's your...
So I know you're doing a lot of research on what other cities have done, and that's terrific. But I'd also really be interested in some of the public concerns that were brought up, and there are many. I remember when Portland went through this, it was pretty heated. In fact, I was expecting to bring the bag monsters that came to the Portland City Council.
Right.
Knowing you, Remy, you're not Remy.
Ramsey.
Ramsey, thank you.
We look alike.
Yes.
Exactly.
I was expecting that. I really was.
Remy before. I'm sure she's never been called Ramsey.
Plan on how we can kind of mitigate some of those concerns, there's so many.
They're a big part of the forum process. The plastic industry is going to show up. There are going to be people within the community, that our neighbors, who are not going to want this. There are a lot of issues that need to be dealt with and discussed, and that's why every ordinance is a little different. But basically, the city council tapers it to what the community wants. And so that's part of the process. We don't, we know we want to replace the bag. We're just not sure at this point how this particular city wants to do it. But we'll bring that process forward.
Years and years and years and years of them just being there. It's going to take a lot of practice to.
Don't get me started.
Yeah. All right. Anything else from the council? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Much.
All right. Additionally, under old business, we have the approval of Visit McMinnville business plan. So last week we heard from Jeff Knapp about the Visit McMinnville's current business plan. However, we left one piece unfinished. We forgot to approve it. So we're going to do that now.
I move to approve the Visit McMinnville business plan as presented.
I second.
We have a motion to approve the plan and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, the motion passes. The business plan has been adopted. Sure, I'm on there.
Roundabout.
All right, moving into new business, we have a presentation on ideas for a more, that's not the right one, thank you, for roundabouts under our street plan. So, Mike, is that you?
Thank you, Council President, members of the council. You will recall when HDR Engineering was before you a month or so ago and gave you an update on the Fifth Street capital improvement project that's part of the transportation bond. They presented to you a couple of options for the Fifth and Lafayette intersection. One was a traffic signal, which is what was included in the bond measure and originally envisioned and planned in that project. And a second was a concept for a roundabout that could function at that location instead of a traffic signal. Certainly there was some interest by both staff, the consultant, and council to further vet the possibility of a roundabout. And you asked us to go away and do some homework and bring back to you sort of a list of issues on benefits and impacts of both options. We've done that for you in your packet in a table form in which we talk about a number of issues related to both a traffic signal and a roundabout. And certainly as we've gathered this information, three sort of important areas come to mind for staff. The footprint of the intersection has a significant impact on adjacent properties, and that is of concern to those property owners. The cost of a roundabout is a significant addition to the project, which is not included in the original budget. And to afford that, we would have to defer other street fund plans, probably at this level of investment, which we estimate would be between $500,000 and $700,000 additional. We'd have to delay a couple years of routine overlays as part of our transportation fund. And then lastly, there would be a significant impact during construction on being able to construct the roundabout. We would have to reroute traffic for a significant period of time through the adjacent neighborhood. That certainly could be done, and parts of that were done when we improved Lafayette Avenue in the late 90s. But I think it's important to recognize that if we move forward with that option, there will be a significant construction impact that the adjacent neighborhood will have to bear. So given all of that, staff certainly thinks the idea of the roundabout was sort of intriguing and sort of had great possibility, but after we've taken the time to investigate it further, we would recommend that you continue the course, if you will, with the original plan, which was for a traffic signal at that location. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on the matter.
All right, thanks, Mike. Any questions?
No questions.
All right. You know, I kind of thought this process was kind of going to the car dealership and test driving that Porsche. You really like that Porsche, but you know, you probably need a minivan. And, I think that's kind of where we are.
Well, we had discussion at dinner a little bit about this, and I do think that, our discussion at our last council meeting, wanting to have a statement piece to go into the northwest or northeast gateway, I think many of us think there ought to be something to designate that area, but at this cost and what we would have to put off, and that's the underlying or the pavement repair for 1 to 2 years, which we didn't share that we were going to be using those dollars when we did the transportation bond. We very specifically said that we were putting about $500,000 and we'd keep up with where we needed to go. So I would personally say if we had to pull that out of our working street repair, we weren't that's not what we shared during the transportation bond. I'd have a hard time, but I'd really like to find some type of statement that we could make to set that apart, whether it's on Irvine going down from 3rd to 5th or something there. We've talked about that, and I think that might be a much more doable thing that could put at least a real nice hood ornament on whatever we're going to get.
Yeah.
I agree with Councilor Hill. It was a really good idea, I think, at the time, but when you really look at it, the question back there, I think, but yeah, is there any way to be mindful of the upgrade of a traffic signal or the enhanced signage or something to come up with a way of making a statement that way? And also the pedestrian, such as at Irvine, to make sure that we do have something different. We've got to create something about that's interesting when pedestrians and traffic come through there that says, okay, we're continuing downtown and this is going to be another nice feature of the city.
Chairman?
Kelly?
I think there's enough practical considerations for using traffic signals versus a roundabout. It just seems to me to be far more practical to do it that way. And personally, I think causing some intermittence in the traffic flow would be nice in that area in particular. I'm sure that there is some, judging from old pictures in McMinnville, some tradition of actually having some signage as you enter a special gateway area, or I'm sure other things that could be coming up that would be helpful, but signage seems to come to mind, rather grand signage sometimes, if you've seen some of the old pictures. At any rate, I agree there should probably be something that would delineate that this is a special area for us, but I personally feel very strongly about the traffic light.
Yeah, I agree that based on the economics, we need to go with a traffic signal. Although I am one that travels Lafayette Avenue 2, 3, 4 times a day, and I do have concerns about congestion with the traffic signal. If we're diverting, there's quite a bit of congestion right at 3rd and Johnson already. Yep. And if we're going to divert more traffic, of course, we're trying to divert it off 3rd Street, but if it's 5th Street's going to come in there too, we've got 2 areas there. I think that a roundabout would keep things flowing better than just bringing everybody to a stop. It kind of reminds me of our Dundee bypass dilemma we have on this end, which I don't. But anyway, I guess what I'm in favor of the traffic signal now because of economics, but I sure don't want to throw this roundabout away down the future. We may need to come back to that 5-10 years from now, because just for traffic flow, because I'm concerned about congestion in between those two, between 5th and 3rd Street there.
Yeah, it is a short block, and it sounds like we're going to be able to coordinate those lights, but just around the bend a little ways is a crosswalk, and that often holds up traffic, and I think there's a lot of planning that needs to be done with that whole area, but in the meantime, I think.
Yeah, because you got a lot of traffic coming out of 8th Street too, and they can't even get out on the highway sometimes, so yeah.
Well, as they start using the school property for a different usage too, we can see more traffic coming from there.
Yeah. Okay, this isn't a public hearing, but JW, if you have something you'd add, we'd.
Thank you. It's Mark Davis's fault. He told me to raise my hand. Notice I'm still here. JW Milligan, 624 Northeast 4th. And it is a historic preservation thing. One thing that's not in the staff report is one of the most historic residences in McMinnville is on that corner at 1004 Northeast 5th. He is the founder of Oregon Mutual, one of your largest private employers in town. If you look at and that's from 1889, and the other house is over 100 years old on Johnson. If you look at the environmental impacts, there's no discussion of the historic resources. That gives you an idea of what's missing and what you need, and you have and I understand you're probably going to vote it down, but Beth and Kathy are here also. But you need to start directing staff to look environmental, include your historic resources and your landmarks commission. So any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay. So do we need a motion to move forward with the
Move forward and then they vote it down. Or actually, at this point, if you want, you can vote it down now. If you wanted to do it, we would just make the budget. We really don't need a resolution, because if you wanted to approve it, we would change the budget, and we would do it through the budget process, because the funds are going to be outlaid so far from the current day. So the discussion is, if you don't wish the staff to pursue this as a budgetary item, we can just kill it right now. So by group consensus, we can just do a consensus vote.
Okay. So
Your current task order is to do
The traffic
the traffic signal, so that's your current contract.
Okay.
So we don't need to do anything really.
Oh.
Unless,
Alan?
I had one question, and for Mike. I'm sure that our consultant has looked at this every which way possible. Is there any other options that have been discussed about enhancing that area where the issue is at the roundabout?
Well, the 5th Street project, as it originally envisioned, does bring in elements of the downtown streetscape plan. Perhaps the decorative lighting can be extended, and I know that the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee is chatted about that. It is a key element of the project to tie, to use that 5th Street project as an opportunity to tie the downtown to the Alpine Avenue project, and so we're looking at the intersection of 5th and Irvine specifically to see how that might be enhanced. But we're also making other pedestrian enhancements throughout the 5th Street corridor to make that more attractive to pedestrians, to make the Alpine connection more accessible. So I think some of those things that you're looking for, signage, decorative fixtures, can come along with the urban renewal plan, as well as perhaps some of the elements in 5th Street, and tie to the Alpine Street work that's happening. So that's happening separate from the roundabout traffic signal discussion. I do know that as envisioned, the traffic signal at 5th and Lafayette would be of the decorative style similar to what you see at 3rd and Johnson, that's more in concert with the vision for the downtown, rather than just a steel pole and a bunch of mast arms like you see at our other traffic signals. So.
Yeah.
We've also talked considerably about bringing some of that historical nature back in placards along Alpine, so that as we start utilizing that more from a pedestrian standpoint, the history of the old that old area is going to be brought to the forefront.
The last thing I would add, just for the council's information, is that the discussion of the historical places along the corridor has happened with our consultant and is a part of our project. So just to assure Mr. Milligan, that is a part of what is included in the project. And what you have before you is a pros and cons related to the operation of the two solutions, traffic signal roundabout. So.
All right, thanks, Mike. So unless there's any objections, we'll move forward with the plan for the traffic signal. Okay. So next up on the agenda, new business, presentation by Recology on contract rates and ways to reduce inflow to the landfill.
Hi, Fred Stemler, 977 Northwest Meadows Drive. Okay, so I have 2 items that are kind of large in my world right now, or on my priority list as far as strategic planning goes. Before I lay those out, are there any questions that you might have for me about the business or the world of trash recycling or compost? Okay, I'll dive in and then fire away if anything comes to mind. So there's 2 things that have happened. Recently in this last year, DEQ passed new benchmarks, essentially goals, aspirational goals that all of the counties were measured throughout the state of Oregon, and we're on par, essentially, we're on track of where we should be as far as our diversion rate goes. But those rates are going up across the state everywhere. Each of the respective counties adopt, they align well with counties, but they're technically by waste sheds. Everybody chose essentially a new aspirational target to aim for. So concurrently at the same time, we also lost credits that were previously given towards that total diversion rate for things like education and other programs in which you got 2% additions added to your overall divertible tonnage. So it's not, I think it's a healthy challenge, and it's one that we can absolutely reach, and one that, from Recology's perspective, is a priority that we continue diverting things out of landfills and putting things into alternate uses, such as compost or recycled products. So I like the challenge, I like the line drawn in the sand, and we're aiming to essentially pass it. So that means new programs that come in. I just ran some numbers. It's both new programs and partnerships, like we saw, whether it be in the bag or I went to a lot of the events this summer. I was really impressed with the volunteerism, kind of the same track and thread that we've talked about before. It was amazing seeing people out there in the community really hands-on on this product and really teaching each other throughout the community. That's what we're all about. I love seeing it here. We need more of that. One opportunity is with our compost program. That's not a new program. It exists today. Yard debris is currently utilized by roughly 9.5% of the residents who have container service out here at their resident itself. Now, everybody in McMinnville who is a subscriber gets a cling that goes into your windshield. It doesn't do me a lot of good with a Prius, but if you got a pickup, you can drive it into our drop-off, and that's a popular service that we get a lot of tonnage that way. As is the case with the depot, we see when you have a drop-off option versus a curbside option, you generally see a much higher participation. So I see a great opportunity ahead of us to really promote our yard debris program and educate the customers that they can actually save money by dropping down the frequency of garbage service, adding 96 gallons of yard debris, and you'd be net a couple bucks ahead if you're a 96 gallon 90 gallon. It's technically 96 gallons, but we market it as 90. 90 gallon weekly garbage collection. You could drop to every other week. That would take you down to about 21. Add on the garbage service or the yard debris service for another 10, and you're still a couple bucks ahead. So there's a monetary savings and there's an environment saving that takes place with it. So I want to use existing programs better. Part of that's going to be partnering with our community. I mean, I'm pointing here to the Zero Waste folks, but it's more than that. It's every community outreach. It's partnering with you to get the words out. It's part of our outreach and our packages. So I want to use those better. We're adding incremental services as well. We're looking at rolling out curbside glass collection. That's a small step in the right direction. it's more of a priority of a convenience. We actually already have recycling of glass at the depot. I was there this weekend dropping off my own. We just need to get more of that product that's going out to the landfill right now back into that depot. And if curbside is one of those services that's going to solve it and that's a priority, we're ready to do it. I've got, if you come around at Orchard and Lafayette, you'll see a bunch of stacked royal blue containers that are waiting to go out. So that service is going to roll out shortly. So expanding compost. Now, when you talk about diversion, you talk about bringing a construction and demolition project out to the landfill. That doesn't need to go there. That has a really high diversion rate to it. In some cases, it's over 90%. I'd like to bring our facility at 2200 Orchard Avenue up to be able to process that kind of material. That's in the future. Doing it in a manner in which we are a great neighbor, as we aspire to be always, is a balance, and we're looking at how we can retrofit that facility to best accommodate that kind of product. So right now, that facility is only allowed to have what's called 3% putrescible waste, which is like residual trash. In order to pick up new products that maybe have a really high diversion percentage but exceed that 3% tolerance or residual is what we call it, waste, I'm looking at changing the permit itself of that facility so that we can expand our recycling programs. So it's a couple of ideas of how we're looking to expand the program and some of the constraints and solutions that I need to work through in order to get there with our existing facility. Now, the second problem that the second priority that's on my horizon right now is we are operating technically under an expired trash disposal agreement with Riverbend Landfill. So we've been looking at, we went through negotiations and we're still technically in them because we have an extension of that existing contract, but I am actively looking at alternatives. And I'm looking at that as a person who has a priority to this community. We provide a service, and I look short-term and I look long-term, and I have to see long-term solutions. And for the last 2 years that I've been here, I've been listening to the discussions that's going on, and I've been getting assurances that that facility is going to be open and it's going to be extended, but there's no guarantees. And I'm seeing more evidence that there are no guarantees with the fifth point coming back from LUBA and now back with the county. So my big fear is that someday I'm going to come there with all of our trash that we picked up at our houses, and they're going to say, oh, sorry, we're closed. We hit capacity. We thought we were going to be there. We thought we were going to be open, but we're not. So I'm a contingency planner, and it's on the back of my, the other priority here is I'm thinking, okay, so what happens if bad shows up and we don't have a good plan in place? And so I've shopped around and I've looked at other options that are there. I've done some research on the logistics are there, but I can create a solution that would assist in the recycling diversion and would also create future options, long-term options for McMinnville by retrofitting our facility from a MRF, material recovery facility, to a transfer station. So those are the two big things in my world right now. And I wanted to just lay those out on the table to really collect any feedback or guidance or suggestions, or just initiate a discussion that we can continue down the road here. But these are important issues. And with the second point, there's no today. It doesn't have to happen today if we do this, but whether it's a year from now or 10 years from now, that facility is going to close, and this community is going to have to figure out what it's going to do with its residual, whether we're at 90% or we're at 56%. There's going to be leftovers that needs to go somewhere. What I've found enlightening through this process is I'm actually starting to take some of the abstract out of the numbers in there, and I've gotten quotes from alternate facilities. So I now know the distance, and I know the price, and I know roughly what construction costs would do because we've done this with my company. This is not anything new. So I can model it out really. I have a high degree of confidence as to specifically what the cost is, so it's not so abstract any longer. And it's not really as bad as some of the hyperbole that I think I've heard in the past too. So that's encouraging to know that there's alternatives out there. So I don't want to get too much into the price specifics at this point. I'd gladly do that closed doors, just out of respect out of the negotiations. But that's the only thing I would ask that we not cover right now.
Remy?
Thank you very much. I have a couple points and a few questions. Some are quite serious and a few are sarcastic. I think that the landfill closing would be great. So I love to hear that you're looking at other alternatives. Could you tell me, you said 3% something waste? And
Putrescible. Putrescible.
Putrescible.
You can call it trash.
Okay. So that I can pass this great news that you're going to be offering curbside glass recycling, when is that? You said very soon. When are you thinking you're going to roll that program out?
It's not going to be a huge program, so I think the turnaround could actually be quite quick. What I'm looking at is probably once a month collection on a 32-gallon container. It takes a lot to fill a 32. A 96 would be prohibitively heavy. I'd be worried about people falling over or it falling on them while they moved it. So you're definitely looking less than 6 months. I really want to drop a lower number on it, but I'd rather underpromise and overdeliver.
Okay, thank you. Food composting.
Yeah.
That was one thing I didn't hear. I heard yard debris, which you can fill a tarp or garbage bags to take your debris to your facility.
Yes.
For yard debris. But what about food composting?
I really appreciate you asking that clarifying question. So what I found when we were going through the white paper study here is that there's a lot of misunderstanding about what goes into yard debris. So we call it yard debris, but it really is food compost as well. So if you can grow it on a bush or a tree, or it comes as produce and it's prep, all of that is eligible to go into. So any rinds that come out, any leftover pineapple, your tomatoes that you don't take into your garden or that you don't use, anything that's in your vegetable drawer. What I don't want is your dairy and your meat and your leftover lasagna. So anything that's prepared should stay out of there. It's amazing. So we throw away almost a third of our trash is food related, whether it be yard debris or food compost. Now, a percentage of that is going to be post-production, but there is a lot. And if you actually start isolating it and putting it over, there's a great opportunity to really take quite a lot out of your trash. And then the benefit of that is it's not decomposing in landfill. And I appreciate that they have gas capturing systems that are over there, but they're designed to catch 75% of what's decomposing out there. I'd rather just put nothing in there that's decomposing.
Great. Wonderful. That's all my questions, comments right now.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments?
I do. Fred, going back to then your yard debris and then the food that's of a vegetation type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it is picked up twice a month? Yard debris?
Every other week, yes.
Every other week. And then does that continue through the winter months also?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. You can suspend service if that was needed, but really, I mean, from my household, I mean, the spring and the fall are peaks as far as yard debris. I wish I had 5 containers of those
Right,
things.
yeah.
But yeah, during the winter months, you would primarily be either, like my wife, for instance, she's still filling it actually because she's trimming back her garden. Okay. But your food that you're producing inside your kitchen, anything in prep.
And that service is how much a month?
It's $10 roughly. I'm off by pennies here, but you're looking at, if you do 90-gallon weekly, you're at about 33. Go to every other week, you're dropping to 21. Add another 10, you're at 31. You just saved yourself $2.
Good.
And you added a whole nother container.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Anybody else? The question I had, I don't know if this is a common concern, but I don't have a whole lot of space for more containers.
Yeah.
Sure.
I would love to have the big composting bin, but honest, with the covenants, they like you to keep those behind your gate, and I'm just running out of space. I do have a little one that I end up taking down there in the back in a trailer that I told you I
Yeah.
was Subaru, but.
I hear you. I hear you. That's a common problem. So the depot offers a lot of solutions for you, as does the yard debris drop-off program. So if you can transport it there yourself, then you have two options there. You could work something out with your neighbors too, where
Not a bad idea.
maybe you don't, but your neighbor's got a little extra space, and
We actually had to do that a couple of times in garbage. Like
tap into the community side. Yeah, I definitely would ask you to work it out beforehand.
And the other thing, I really appreciate you being so proactive and looking around, because, we're not the biggest contributor to Riverbend. Yamhill County is what percentage, Ram?
25%, but now that SB newsprint has gone down, that's basically half of 25%, so we're in
Yeah.
the teens.
So we're not the biggest contributor there, and so if that were to close, we would then be in competition for access to all these other landfills.
Yeah.
And
We're not insignificant. We're a big customer.
we are, but if we're going there, there's space is at a premium in these places, and so if we could get assurities on a different location even before that closes, I think it's clear what the council, we would love it even if it stays open, we're trying to show leadership that we don't want stuff going there.
Yeah, both of my alternatives have over 50 years of capacity.
Thanks. Okay. That's all I got.
There's more too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing when you start knocking on the doors. Word gets around, and that's really why I wanted to talk to you about it, is to get some direction and just feel where the priorities are, where the interests are. We have time. I prefer to not do things at the last minute. So that's really why I'm trying to lay this out.
Okay. Thank you. Alan?
Well, this is fairly important, and we really appreciate that. I'm just wondering, because of the late hour, if we should set another time to really dig into it and be able to think about it a little bit more and express our priorities better at a later date.
And that might be better after we have our goal setting, because I think it may come up again as a part of our annual goal setting. But having this conversation is very helpful to us, as it would be to you, I think.
Most certainly. And you can call on me anytime. I'm just right down the street.
Okay. Thanks, Fred.
Yeah. Okay.
Fred?
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have a presentation on ideas for a more representative city council by Dr. Neil, I'm going to butcher this, Holkauer? I used to substitute teach, and man, that's difficult to do roll call in some of these names, so I'm glad I didn't butcher that one too bad.
It wasn't until I was 40 before I could spell it, so it's really okay. I'll be brief because it's kind of late. So it's up there, good. Let's see here. There we go.
Martha's got hers, I'm going to go with her.
So I want to just cover two things in this presentation. The ideas center around taking a look at how the city council is elected, and I want to look very briefly at wards versus at large. And then I want to talk about voting methods, and that's really the bulk of the presentation. Let's see, let's get this off. Okay. So I'm relatively new. I moved here in 2011, and I found it curious that a town this size elects city council members by ward as opposed to at large. So as part of the preparation for this presentation, I did a little research to see if anybody had done studies of how city councils are elected in cities of different sizes. And there was one study that came out in 2003, unfortunately it hasn't been updated. And for small cities, which we certainly fit in the category of, at large was the plurality. A mixed system where you're doing districts or wards and at large, another 25%, and district or ward, 26%. So really, we're kind of out of step with cities of comparable size. It would be really interesting to look at doing an at-large election. I think there's a number of advantages that would be accrued. You'd have a greater degree of competition and eliminate uncontested seats. You should actually attract a wider field of candidates, a generally good thing to do. And then in conjunction with the right voting method, you're more likely to get the best representation of the will of the people. Now, the last bullet there is a loaded one and really it leads to the next discussion here, which is voting methods. Okay. This is,
Hey, Mike, can you give him a hand?
fix it. Green. Okay. Ah, there we go. Good.
Thanks, Mike.
So why is a voting method important? One of the things I was supposed to do is just give you a little bit of my background. I'm an applied mathematician, and I've been dabbling in voting theory and its applications for a while. And one of the leaders in developing the theory of voting is Don Sari, who was my dissertation advisor at Northwestern. Now, I didn't study voting theory with him. I studied celestial mechanics. But since then, he got into voting theory, and I kind of got fascinated with it. And he's written many papers and many books on the subject, and you'll be hearing some of his results very briefly. But a critical quotation is in front of you now. The reason the voting method is important is because it determines the outcome of the election, given a fixed profile. And the other reason it's important is that not all methods are created equal. So how you go about voting on something is not only can influence the outcome, but it may or may not have a good basis. So let me elaborate on that. Most of the voting schemes that we use are called positional voting schemes, and that means that the voters rank order all of the candidates. It might have been something you could have considered when you were doing the choice of the three individuals. Then the points are assigned based on the rank of the candidate, with the largest point total being the winner. So for three candidates, you can normalize, whatever that means, the points and assign 1 point to the top ranked candidate, S, where S is a number between 0 and 1, to the middle ranked candidate, and 0 for the lowest ranked candidate. We do plurality voting. You all were elected with plurality voting. So what's plurality voting? S is 0. It means that each individual's first choice got 1 point, and if they had any other choices, they got no points. Anti-plurality voting, which in some sense is the opposite of that, says you're voting against someone. You're voting against the lowest ranked person. He gets 0 points. Everybody else gets 1. And then there's this thing, which is sort of the Goldilocks method, called the Borda count. And that sets S equal to a half. So let's take a look at what happens when we apply each of those voting methods to a given profile. And in voting theory, a profile is simply a set of rankings that voters provide. So you can see the number of votes that have A over B over C, that's 4, and so on. You can take a look at that. So this is not going to change in this discussion. Everybody sat down, you all sat down, and you rank ordered your candidates. Now I'm going to use each of the different methods and show you that I get a separate winner. So if you do plurality voting, which is how we vote, A is preferred to B is preferred to, I'm sorry, A is preferred to C is preferred to B. If we do the anti-plurality voting, where we're voting against somebody, then B is preferred to C is preferred to A. And if you pick the Goldilocks method, the Borda count, then C is preferred to A is preferred to B. Now, it might be disturbing to some folks that this Borda method trumps or it has a different outcome than the plurality and the anti-plurality vote. So let's look at this in some depth over here. How do you pick from amongst these, or for that matter, any kind of voting method? I mean, they all seem to have some rationality behind them. Well, back in the 50s, there was an economist named Kenneth Arrow who looked at this and came up with 4 properties that he thought would be rational for basing a voting method on. And these are the properties on here, and I'm not going to read them to you, except I do want to point out one, and it's the one that's the most complicated. It's called binary independence or independence of irrelevant alternatives, because that one is problematic. That one turned out to be an issue. And what it says is, if in a collection of votes you have A is preferred to B, and all of a sudden you either add or subtract a candidate, that the societal outcome that has A preferred to B is preserved. Okay, that kind of sounds intuitively like it should be the case. So Arrow said, okay, I'm going to pick these 4 different methods, and it turns out that the only voting scheme that satisfies those 4 properties is a dictatorship. It means that one person decides what the societal outcome, and everybody else's vote doesn't count. This is shocking, right? This is a terrible thing. They gave him the Nobel Prize for it in '72. And the problem is that until Don Sari looked at this in some depth, everybody now said, oh my God, there's no rational basis for coming up with a voting method. It turns out that that property is incompatible with transitivity. What does that mean? What's transitivity? Transitivity means if you have an outcome where A is preferred to B and B is preferred to C, then A better be preferred to C. If you insist on this independence of irrelevant alternatives, you may not end up with a transitive outcome. How screwed up is that? Okay? Okay. So what that means, when you're looking only at the relative position of A and B, you're actually treating A is preferred to B, is preferred to C, is preferred to D, as the same as being A is preferred to C, is preferred to D, is preferred to B. That's how you're treating them, and they're not the same. Okay, so you're losing information. You're losing information. What information are you losing? The intensity of the preference, right? In the first case, A and B are very close. In the second case there, A and B have 2 other candidates in between. If you only are looking at A relative to B and ignoring the middle, you're losing information. The whole thing with a voting method is you got to keep all the information. So Don Sari substituted for intensity of irrelevant alternatives this thing called the intensity form of it, where you do take into account what's in between. And when you do that, you end up with, I keep wanting to hit that because that's the way it usually works, but not now. Okay. You end up with actually the Borda method as being the only method that satisfies the 4 rational criteria, substituting the intensity form for the unintensity form, or the regular form. So what's Borda? Okay, Borda was a mathematician who got frustrated with the French society, the Science Society, and the way they picked their candidates. Sound familiar? And so he came up, or rediscovered, it's believed that this method may have existed before him, and proposed this scheme that got his name. And in general, if you have n candidates, you assign n minus 1 points to the top ranked, and n minus 2, and all the way down to 0. You add up all of the Borda scores, and the one that comes out with the largest number is the Borda winner. Why is it better? Well, Don Sari proved that the Borda count is the only non-dictatorial positional voting method that satisfies those 4 properties. And it's also unique amongst all positional voting methods because all possible inconsistencies in the Borda ranking over subsets of candidates are strictly due to things called Condorcet terms. What the hell is that, right? 10 o'clock at night and I'm talking to you about Condorcet terms. He was another mathematician. And very simply, if you take a look at this 4-tuple where each candidate assumes first, second, third, and fourth place, you end up with a cycle, right? And so any rational voting scheme would have that as a tie. You end up with no winner. If you add or subtract a candidate, for example, D, and you get A is preferred to B is preferred to C twice. So it turns out then that A is the winner. So this is an inconsistency in that you don't have a tie anymore. You end up with a distinct winner by adding or subtracting a candidate. Borda is the only one that has that kind of inconsistency. Any other positional voting scheme has that and other inconsistencies. What bothers people about Borda sometimes is that it may not be the majority winner. And ever since we were little, it was drilled into our head, majority rule, majority rule, majority rule, right? So here's an example of where the Borda winner is not the majority winner. We have 5 votes for A is preferred to B is preferred to C, and 4 votes A is B is preferred to C is preferred to A. So the majority winner is clearly A with 5 votes. B comes in second with 4, and C is 0. But the plurality vote doesn't use all the information. What the plurality vote ignores is your second place vote, right? So if you take that into account and aggregate with Borda, you end up with B as the Borda winner. And it turns out then that all the information is used. So you have a majority winner A. It's the first choice of 5 of the 9 voters, and he or she is the third choice of the rest. The Borda winner B is the first choice of 4 winners and the second choice of the rest. If the goal of the voting method is to use complete information, a rational basis for it, and to arrive at a societal outcome that best reflects the performance, the preferences of the voters, then you should use Borda. So my recommendation is that first, the city council members should be elected at large rather than by wards. And secondly, to implement rank ordering of candidates, not vote for one. Aggregate the votes using Borda, the top candidates are elected. I appreciate your attention.
Any questions for the good doctor?
Just how did they implement this in Europe?
How
How did
did
they
they-
implement this in Europe?
In Europe? Okay, Europe doesn't use it.
Oh, I thought you said they did.
It's used, no, it's used in some
they did. I
small
thought they
island in the Micronesia.
Oh.
And actually, it may be a derivative of Borda, which actually ruins it. You lose you lose the benefits of it. It is used a lot in organizations, and it's used.
Yes, I've seen it used in organizations, but I've never seen it used in political.
Yeah.
Might be kind of tricky to do.
Well, my goal in coming to you is to propose a number of things. One is perhaps in your own discussions, like when you're choosing amongst candidates for a position on a committee, you try board out and see if you're satisfied with the outcome. It's a suggestion. Honestly, and my wife and I talk about this all the time, I think we actually have to start teaching kids voting theory in grade school and have them do their elections this way. And that way they'll grow up and it'll be implemented in the political system. If you take a look at why we end up with polarizing candidates who get 51% of the vote and claim some sort of mandate, it's because we elect them with the plurality method and not with a border scheme where we inherently end up with a compromise candidate who is minimally accepted to all, by most, just like that example I showed you.
That often becomes the issue. Are they electable, not whether or not you truly want them to be the candidate?
They're electable if you use the right voting method. They're certainly electable. I was amused. I used to live in Massachusetts, and Massachusetts is a heavily Democratic state. It's a liberal Democratic state. How did it end up with Republican governors like 4 in a row? How do you do that if it's a heavily Democratic state? The way you do that is you knock your strong candidates off in the primaries using plurality voting, and then it ends up that your weakest candidate goes up against the strongest Republican candidate. And it happened time after time after time. And I just shook my head. It's the voting method that's screwed. How do you end up with a wrestler as the governor of Minnesota, right? I mean, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. It's amusing.
Well, that was really cool. Thank you so much for coming today.
My pleasure. Thanks for hearing me out.
So I was very interested in your
Come on up, Mark.
presentation, and so when we had the 3 candidates up here earlier, as each person was saying their first and second pick, I made a note, not that your theory needed proving at all, but the end result would have been the initial result if you applied the Borda theory to that first decision regarding the budget committee meeting, where
So you would have ended up with the same candidate, and that's fine.
after 1 vote instead of after 3 votes.
Instead of after 3 votes, which has its own set of issues, but.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you also for bringing up the question of wards. I think one of the first questions I ever asked our city manager is, why does McMinnville have wards? Because I don't know if you remember that, but I wonder that myself. I also think that we are very small, and I don't know why wards are applicable. Not that I'm not happy to represent mine, but we're a small community to be divided and assuming that anybody lives within one section of McMinnville or another.
All right, thanks. Mark, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah.
And again, put your stamp on the...
Sure. Mark Davis, 652 Southeast Washington Street here in McMinnville. I'll answer my council representative from my ward and say that the reason I got up here to speak is because that's the only part of the presentation that I had an objection to, was doing away with the wards. I think the wards are important. I think it's important that there be someone representing physically different parts of town. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody would live in one part of town if we went to at-large, but certainly that would be a possibility. And I know that's one of the grumblings that we hear regularly about our county commission. Oh, everybody lives in McMinnville, or, whatever. whatever. I mean, oh, well, I'm the candidate that will best represent the West County, that kind of stuff. I just like the fact that we have wards. I think the method here that he's talking about is interesting. I'd love to see it implemented more on a state or national level. I honestly don't think it's that critical on a McMinnville City Council level to be, without trying to insult anybody up here, but I bet if I asked 10 citizens downtown to name the 6 of you, I don't think I could find one of them who could do that, let alone to be able to ascertain what your positions are on the various issues that are being voted on. So then to ask people to at large, rank 6 people in order of preference, I think that would be a large challenge. But as far as the method itself, I'm not opposed to it. I just like to keep the wards so we make sure we have people from each area. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Remember to write your name in there. All right. Anything else from the council on that? Okay, it was posted on the agenda, confirmation of committee appointments, but during our dinner meeting, we discovered that there were some issues with what was proposed, and so we asked staff to take it back and bring it back to us with some more recommendations. So that brings us to ordinances. So we have a couple ordinances on the table. Ordinance number 4998, granting a non-exclusive telecommunications franchise to Astound LLC. So we had a reading on this last time, and so now we're up for a second reading. Do we need a report on this, Martha? Or we think
If you're comfortable, I think nothing has changed, and the agreement from the last council meeting was if we could complete the franchise agreement with Astound, proceed with the easement, then we'd go ahead with the second reading. That has been accomplished, so we set the conditions for the second reading.
Okay. So do we need to read this again?
Yes.
Okay, so would you please?
Ordinance number 4998, an ordinance granting a non-exclusive telecommunications franchise to Astound Broadband LLC, DBA Wave, as grantee or franchisee.
Okay, thank you. Rose, could you please pull the council?
Yes. Councillor Drabkin?
Aye.
Councillor Hill?
Aye.
Councillor Menke?
Aye.
Councillor Rudin?
Aye.
Councillor Yoder?
Aye.
And Council President Jeffries?
Aye. Let the record show that the ordinance 4998 passed unanimously. Ordinance 4999, granting a non-exclusive telecommunications franchise with Online Northwest. Martha, this is a new one, so.
And this is a new one, and Online Northwest is a company here in McMinnville that I think several of us are familiar with, and they would like to get in the business of providing services over the internet, such as DSL on a residential level, and then also to join and help provide some high-end internet services, IT connections to businesses in the area. So this is yet another franchise agreement allowing them to access our public rights of ways so they can lay material in order to progress with their business model. This one is a little bit different though, because unlike others that were citywide, such as Comcast or Verizon when they first came in, now Frontier, they will not be providing residential service citywide. They're just not that big yet, so we have given them a very small area of the city, and that map is in your package and is part of the franchise agreement. Should they desire to grow out of that area, then they will provide a new franchise agreement, much like we have when Verizon first came to town, and they had an initial service area, and then they grew and populated until they reached the whole city.
All right, so is there any discussion?
No.
If not, then City Attorney, please, could you read the ordinance by title only, please?
Ordinance number 4999, an ordinance granting a non-exclusive telecommunications franchise to Online Northwest as grantee or franchisee.
Second reading, please.
Ordinance number 4999, an ordinance granting a non-exclusive telecommunications franchise to Online Northwest.
Thank you. Rose, could you please poll the council?
Councillor Drabkin? Aye. Councillor Hill?
Aye.
Councillor Menke?
Aye.
Councillor Rudin?
Aye.
Councillor Yoder?
Aye.
Council President Jeffries?
Aye. Let the record show that the ordinance number 4999 passed the council unanimously. Move into resolutions. We have resolutions 2015-61, amending the contract with HDR Engineering to reflect additional design services for the extension of the Alpine Avenue project from 10th to 11th Street. Mike?
Thank you, Council President, members of the council. When the council met with the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee, there was an expressed interest in exploring the opportunity to expand the city's Alpine Avenue Transportation Bond Measure project to include additional area that would be funded via urban renewal funds. So what you have before you this evening is the cost to provide the design for the 2 additional blocks between 10th and 11th. This will get you through bidding of the work. We will prepare the design package such that those 2 additional blocks are an additive alternate to the construction contract, so that you'll be able to evaluate whether or not you have the wherewithal within the urban renewal funding to provide for the construction at the same time we construct the rest of Alpine. And so, unless there are any questions, staff would recommend that you adopt this resolution approving the design task order to HDR Engineering in the amount of $162,291, with the caveat that in a few minutes, as your urban renewal agency, you're going to improve the funding mechanism for this design services.
All right, thanks. Is there any discussion? Any questions for staff? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Motion by Councilor Hill, a second by Councilor Rudin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Well, the resolution, I suppose, that's probably the correct. Thank you. And that closes us up for resolutions. Any advice or information given the hour, and we have to move into the Urban Renewal Committee. I'd like to hold off, and we can do that at the end if needed. So that said, I'm closing the City Council meeting, and I am opening up the Urban Renewal meeting. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. Hope your commute was good. Doug, do you want to give us a report?
Given the lateness of the hour, this will be very brief. I think Mike has covered well the issue before you. The other issue I bring to the table is one around the issue of paying for this $162,000 contract. The urban renewal budget does not have adequate loans in the funds in that budget at present. So staff is therefore seeking your authorization to prepare a loan agreement between the city and the Urban Renewal District Agency, and to bring back the mechanics of that loan agreement to you in January for your review and approval. If you have any questions about what I've just tried to say this evening at 10:15 in the evening, I'm sure the finance director or city manager would be more than happy to cover those.
This was the intent of that district, was it not, to provide
That's
these
correct.
services for us?
That's correct.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, the only way urban renewal can spend funds is they have to have it through a debt service organization. So a loan or a bonding organization. So this, in this one case, would pay for that design services through the recognized instrument being a debt.
And how much would the loan be for? The whole amount?
Pardon me?
Would the loan be for the entire amount, the 162?
Yes, plus whatever interest it might be a part of that agreement. I should mention that as a companion piece to this, the finance director will be bringing back to you a supplemental budget to adjust the current urban renewal budgets to reflect this loan and the expenditures and repayment.
Alan?
So the loan will be paid off through the accumulation of tax increments coming in. Is that right? And what's the duration of that to pay off that?
The answer to your first question is yes, it would be through tax increment proceeds. The term of the loan will need to have some discussion with amongst staff so we don't compromise or other make it difficult to do other projects that may be in the queue. It will be of short duration, I could say that.
That would be coming back in the recommendations for that loan agreement.
So that'll be coming in January, and then we'll have a better grasp on it then.
And both those, the reason we're hesitant to do it now is because we want to allow the Urban Advisory Committee to tee up the terms. I mean, it'll be a 1-year, 2-year loan agreement.
Okay. Any other questions? Good questions, Alan. Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to direct staff to prepare a loan agreement between the city and the Urban Renewal Agency for the amount needed to fund the additional design work to extend Alpine Avenue from 10th to 11th.
I move to direct staff to
Do those things?
et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Alan?
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Okay, so, new business, confirmation of advisory committee appointments. Doug, this is for the Urban Renewal Committee?
Yes, very briefly, we're asking you to extend or reappoint 4 members of that committee. Those would be Mr. Ed Gormley, Ms. Marilyn Warricks, Ms. Wendy Stassens, and Mr. Rob Stevenson. Another 3-year term on that committee.
Okay. Any questions for staff on this?
We're lucky to have all of those people on that committee, and I would move to confirm their appointments to that committee.
Do you have a motion to confirm the appointments? Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hill. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The motion passes unanimously. That takes us to the end of the urban renewal meeting. If there's no other questions, was there any advice or information? I kind of skimmed over that, but does anyone have anything they'd like to say before we close? No, everyone's quiet all of a sudden.
I'm waiting for the
Goodness.
order mechanism the next time we do that measure.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.